So, I wonder if you watched the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, over the weekend, addressing, the DA Congress or party supporters in the Western Cape. And, well, I can tell you now, he was in the mood, as one would expect. Political leaders, with the election coming up now pretty soon on the 29th of May, doing whatever they can, not only to speak to their audience there, but also they know it's been covered on radio and TV, so to speak to a national audience as well. So what John Steenhuisen said certainly got me thinking. I mean, he made the point, right? He said this, that effectively the DA running the Western Cape is the best run region or province in the entire country. And his message, therefore, was that for there to be continued progress and opportunities for people in the Western Cape, he's wondering the risk of the progress is by the other parties. And by that he means the Good Party, the NCC, PA and Rise Mzansi. He mentioned them specifically. What he's suggesting is they're wanting to contest the Western Cape region puts at risk the continued progress and opportunities for the people of the Western Cape. And he's suggesting they need to go elsewhere, saying like, why here? Why don't you go and contest the other 8 regions which are not well run, instead of this region which is the best run in the country. Now, you can debate his election point of view, because every, leader of a political party has a stance, and they certainly want to put that forward, okay? So I understand that part. But then he made the point, he went on further, right? In terms of saying, why are you coming to the Western Cape to unseat the only party that delivers? And then he made the point, well, you know what? What will stop them? And why they're doing this with us? Because there's nothing left in the other provinces, and suggesting they'll only stop because if they take over the Western Cape, if they succeed, then he made the point, well, they will then do the same thing with what has happened in the other 8 provinces, suggesting there'll be a bank heist, and I quote him, there'll be a bank heist in the Western Cape if they get in. But here's the point, okay? And this is my point. So he's saying, what is he saying? He's saying, don't play on our turf. This turf belongs to us. Go and do your business elsewhere. Just don't do it here. This is ours. I mean, in essence, that is what he's saying. It reminds me, there's been many taxi association wars where they unilaterally mark out zones and they don't want other taxis to enter. And then you get the metered taxis, and they want to push out the Ubers and the Bolts, suggesting again, these are our demarcated turf and you can't enter this space. So just imagine, if Telkom banned the arrival of the mobile industry in the 1990s because it's their right to own the industry because it's their turf. I mean, what would have happened then? The reality is elections, as in business, is determined by service delivery to markets. The markets ultimately decide. And the only reason we are talking about a coalition is because the governing party, as we know, has governed miserably in recent years, and the DA, the EFF, and a social justice party has not filled that space adequately. That's why we're talking about a potential coalition, right? So voters are looking at options, and the point to John Steenhuisen and everybody else who feels entitled to tell other parties to stay out of our space is this: no party, not the ANC, not the DA, not the EFF, and the smaller parties, no party has the right to determine who owns the space. That right is granted and taken away by you and I at an election, and that will happen on May the 29th. I'm Ashraf Garda, and that's my point.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, you can certainly give me comments on that. This is the National Pulse. My name is Ashraf Garda. Welcome indeed to the show, wherever you may be around the country. If it's in the wet and miserable over the weekend Western Cape, to the problematic Mangaung, to Limpopo, to even Joburg now, because it's all completely overcast and I cannot see outside this SABC 6th floor window where SAFM is. Wherever you may be, welcome indeed to the show. And that welcome can be connected in many other ways. Love it when you engage with me, and you know that. You can tweet out to the X platform using the hashtag The National Pulse. Give your thoughts on all the things we talk about all throughout the show. You can call in 086 000 2032. You can WhatsApp, voice note, or text me 0614 104 107. Any thoughts and comments about what I just said about John Steenhuisen and leaving the other parties, getting them to stay out of the Western Cape? You want to comment on that? I want to know what you may want to say. I did tell you already that this election is highly contested. So while we talk about John Steenhuisen and the DA, there's lots of other things we'll talk about, including, in fact, and that's where I want to get to right away, including the position of the MK party, because you know that the IEC, in fact, recently declared that the former leader of the country, the former President Jacob Zuma, cannot stand on, he can be a part of the MK party, but he cannot be voted in as an MP and therefore by default as a president again, by virtue of his appearances in prison a while back. We'll try and make sense of that, because there's been the MK party's legal representative, Advocate Dali Mpofu, has put forward a case. We're going to try and understand what that case is all about in terms of their position. So let's get more about that right away with the SABC News reporter Zoleka Kodashi, who's covering the story. Zoleka, appreciate your time and thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to listeners.
Thank you. And we certainly want to get a finger on our national pulse regarding this ongoing issue about the MK party and their push effectively to have former President Zuma is effectively put up as their leader on the ballot sheet, isn't it?
Yes, correct. Well, there have been multiple various arguments that have been made in relation to that. Just for background, if you remember, 2 weeks ago, the IEC came out saying that they had actually upheld various objections to the list of the MK party, which had former President Jacob Zuma as its number one candidate for its candidates list. And so that's against the backdrop that we are here in court, in the electoral court today, in which the their party is appealing that decision by the IEC that essentially invoked Section 47 of the Constitution.
So in terms of, so what is the line of MK's defense now? I mean, look, they're certainly not taking that IEC decision lying down because the stakes are high. I think that's pretty obvious, right? What is the thrust of their defense?
Well, there are three, I think, main points that are being made by the MK party today. Chief among them is the fact that they say the IEC acted ultra vires, so that is outside of its jurisdiction when it invoked Section 47 of the Constitution. Because remember, the section also deals with the regulation of the membership of the National Assembly. So Advocate Dali Mpofu coming out there saying that, well, that is not within the jurisdiction and that the IEC does not have the authority to invoke such a section. And in fact, the only body that can regulate the membership of the National Assembly is the National Assembly itself. If we remember what Section 47 actually says, it says that it disqualifies any person that has been convicted of an offence and sentenced to more than 12 months in prison without the option of a fine. And so if we remember, the former president was meted out a sentence of 15 months imprisonment by the Constitutional Court for contempt of court in 2021. And so the another argument that has been made by the Umkhonto Sizwe party is that the remission of sentence that was granted to the former president in September last year by President Cyril Ramaphosa essentially cancelled out the 12 months that he was due to serve after the Constitutional Court said, well, the medical parole that had been granted to him was granted unlawfully, and that he had to serve the remainder of the sentence. The Umkhonto weSizwe Party says, well, this is not the case. Because of the remission of sentence that was granted to him, it cancels out the 12 months, and essentially the ultimate sentence is the 3 months that he already spent in prison. And finally, another argument that was made by the Umkhonto weSizwe Party is that by the removal of, or essentially the disqualification of the former president to stand as a candidate for the Umkhonto weSizwe Party in Parliament, it essentially infringes on his Section 19 rights in the Constitution, and those relate to people that are eligible to stand for public office. And it says that every adult citizen can stand for public office, and if elected can hold public office. And so they say that if you remove the former president from the list, then you are infringing on his Section 19 rights. And not only that, the people that want to support him, as well as the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, you are essentially infringing on their rights.
Okay, so it's all really fascinating, isn't it? I mean, do you have any idea, and it may be difficult to answer this, but, any idea about sentiments based upon previous precedent, and I say that with inverted commas, as to where this case may go?
Not at this moment. We've seen the Council for the IEC getting really grilled on the matter of the remission of sentence, but they also saying that the remission of sentence was not that the 15-month sentence as meted out by the court, the Constitutional Court, ceases to exist, right? But we've seen it go both ways, with justices asking pertinent questions to the counsel of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, as well as counsel for the Independent Electoral Commission. But we do understand that the IEC will be releasing its final candidates list on Wednesday. And so I imagine that the decision that will come out of this electoral court from today's hearings and sittings will have an impact on the IEC further.
Well, that leads me on to the next point. That means that decision then has to be made very, very soon. Imminently, in fact.
Correct. While we don't know when the decision will be made, because from my understanding, this isn't an urgent application that has been brought before the court, but we do know that it is an appeal that's been brought before the court and appealing the decision of the IEC. So we do expect that, given the nature of this court, in the fact that they hear electoral matters and matters that have also to do with the IEC, that they would be cognizant of the fact that the IEC has to meet certain deadlines.
And lastly, I take it supporters of former President Jacob Zuma and in general MK supporters are outside the court, or maybe inside if they could get in, effectively making clear where their party's endship lies?
That is correct. Before proceedings started this morning, there were MK supporters that were chanting outside, as well as MK vehicles, MK branded vehicles rather. We also have support for the president inside the courtroom at the electoral court today. And so there is quite a show of support for the former president and the Umkhonto weSizwe Party.
And that's where we're going to give thank you for your time, Zoleka Kodashi. I think it's a very, very important issue which has huge significance, not just on that final list on Wednesday, but for that May 29 election, whichever way it goes. I appreciate your time. We've had comments from people commenting about John Steenhuisen's comments and my thoughts about that. So keep those voice notes coming, certainly. But there's a text note. Vincent Rizimati in Brackman saying, Ashraf, what John Steenhuisen said is reminiscent of apartheid. He's damaging his dream of Moon Pact by undermining the other parties that he needs for that coalition. Just one point of coming out of the Moon Pact, right, is that the parties that he is now slated, my understanding is none of them form part of the Moon Pact. So those that do are already in alliance, and they will contest the election, but they won't contest the DA, if you get my point. They'll be getting votes on either way. It's an interesting one in terms of his stance and whether that actually holds much sway with me and you, the voters. Does he talk to us by saying what he's saying? Because that's really what I would think his intention may well be. We'll talk about the Rwanda genocide. 30 years commemorating that horrific period in the world, in Rwanda, on the African continent. We'll talk to Sophie Mokoena right after this.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.7 FM in Cape Town. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
2 years since winning the EFC middleweight title in the most dramatic and controversial fashion, Luke Michael finally defends his belt for the very first time at EFC 112 against the imposing submission machine, J.P. Kruger. And in the co-main event, featherweight champion Iga Smiley Kabesa becomes the next athlete aiming for champ status as he battles the imposing Kaleka Block Kabanda. EFC 112 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
African champions and top 16 team in the world are in action on Tuesday, the 9th of April at the Loftus Versfeld Stadium at 7:30 p.m. They are on the road to the Paris 2024 Olympic qualifiers as they face Nigeria for the last spot in the Olympics. Join us to #FillUpLoftus. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro at 50 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children under 12 and scholars in uniform. You can also watch the match live on SABC Sports on DTT Channel 4 at 7 p.m. For more details, visit safa.net and Banyana_Banyana on X.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Professor John Patricios, the Director of Waterfall Sports Orthopedic Surgery. What concussion is all about? What effect does it have on the brain, on the mind, and why can't players play on if they do get a knock on the head immediately? Why do they need to be assessed?
There's no visible wound for concussion, so to understand what's going on requires some intuition in terms of the changes that happen in a player's brain. So concussion is a traumatic brain injury. It's an injury to the nerves in the brain, but not so much a visible structural injury, so for instance a bleed or anything that we can see, but more of an injury to the way the brain functions.
Top Sport on SAFM. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, I'm so looking forward to the conversation with Reverend Michael Wieder, the Dean of St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, coming up on the other side of news and sports, so looking out for that. But let's now cross to Sophie Mokoena, SABC's News International Editor, referring, as part of our Global Watch features, we talk about genocide, Rwanda, 30 years. Sophie, I was wondering, when am I going to talk to you since I got back to SAFM? Good afternoon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashraf. I always knew that there will be a time where I'll have to be on your show.
Oh, I don't know. Well, we last met 3 months ago, as you know, in Pretoria. But there is another time, another moment, right? Let's talk about Rwanda. You're there. What was the purpose? I mean, I understand there's a commemoration, but you just set the scene for us. What was it all about? Because not everybody remembers an incident that needs to be remembered.
You would recall in 1994 when South Africa was focused on preparing for the democratic elections. In Rwanda, tension was brewing and they were in and out of the country, neighboring countries trying to mediate in terms of different point of view and understanding of a nation with different cultures and also different groupings. But unfortunately, at one point when the then president of Rwanda, was flying back from Tanzania, where they were having talks to try and mediate the internal problems of Rwanda that was spilling all over the region and affecting other countries. His plane was brought down and he died with the president of Burundi, and therefore civil war ensued. And therefore those who were in the bush, who were fighting to try and liberate Rwanda from what they perceived as a regime that was hostile to a certain group of people, then continued with the fight and fighting the government forces who were fingering those who were out of the country as bearing responsibility in terms of bringing that laying down. And that was the start of the genocide and a targeted group. You know, the convention says if you kill a particular group, that is a genocide. And therefore, the Tutsis in particular were targeted because there was a belief that they are problematic, and because majority of people were Hutus who were in charge. And therefore, the hate speech on the radio stations and leaders singling them out, and people killed each other, even neighbors. Some even killed their own families because they are married to the Tutsis.
I understand,
and they were commemorating that.
I understand, like 1 million people or so died, and of course, I had the privilege, a very sad privilege, to be at to witness that Rwanda genocide memorial, and it is such a sobering experience that we all need to remember, right? Having said that, I mean, you've been part of this commemoration, and you've had an audience with the Rwandan President Paul Kagame and others. I mean, tell us what's come out of those.
Well, clearly, the focus also from our side was the relationship between South Africa and Rwanda. You know that it's not healthy, tensions after some Rwandese were killed in South Africa who had fled to South Africa because they were fighting with Kagame. And therefore, South Africa saying that there were reports that the government of Rwanda was responsible. And therefore, you can't have a situation where you get into a country, you kill and you leave. So it got to a point where the relations were very frosty. And then the DRC, eastern part of the DRC, where you have the M23 rebels fighting with the government forces. There again, it's an issue of a particular group in a country that is being not taken care of and now fighting for their almost autonomy. And they are linked to neighboring countries. As you know, I am Lesotho. I was born in Free State. I don't know anything about Lesotho, but there's that linkage, Basotho and Basotho in Lesotho, Botswana in Northwest, and Botswana in Botswana, the same with Mozambique and Limpopo and Mpumalanga. So you have these linkages, particularly along the borders. And therefore, we wanted to know, because South Africa is in that region with the SADC forces.
Fair
and
enough,
today we get the news that 4 soldiers have been killed from SADC, 3 from Tanzania, 1 a South African who died in hospital. So there's those kind of issues. And they had a meeting, they met. It looks like now they have found one another. I've just spoken to former President Thabo Mbeki, who said he's also happy that President Ramaphosa and President Kagame have met. He even passed his condolences to the soldiers who have died in the DRC as part of the SADC force.
And I mean, we've got about 30 seconds before I get to news. Is there anything, either Paul Kagame, well, let's say him specifically, has said regarding the big lessons to learn, 30 years later regarding the issue of the Rwandan genocide? Because we can draw relationships to what's happened certainly now with Palestine and Israel. Again, this concept of the phrase genocide comes to the fore.
Yes, the suppression and the discrimination against a particular group. And this is a perfect example of what's happening in the Middle East. You have Palestinians who are targeted, and it's a targeted group, and they are being killed. So we are witnessing something developing similar to a genocide. And that is why South Africa has gone to the International Court of Justice to ask the ICJ to intervene to stop Israel, because it's targeting a particular group. Yes, other people are dying, but the specific targeted group that is dying, they bear hallmarks of genocide.
So very quickly, in 15 seconds, did Kagame say anything about lessons to learn about what causes genocides? Did he say that?
He said it's hatred and a marginalization of people or suppressing a people. Exactly what's happening in Palestine. Suppression of Palestinians. They have to go through checkpoints by another group. And therefore, he said these are the things that people mustn't do.
Okay, point made, and I think it's an apt warning that we all need to remember. Sophie Mokoena in Rwanda, thank you for your time. Let's move on now to the news headlines. Here's Luyanda Maome.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. In your headlines, the University of Johannesburg's Professor Atmaya Mare says politicians are not immune from spreading misinformation. Mare, who's a professor at the UJ Communications Department, was speaking at the multi-sectoral dialogue focusing on misinformation ahead of the upcoming elections in Sandton today. Council for Umkhonto weSizwe Party has argued that the IEC acted outside its jurisdiction when it upheld the objection that disqualifies former President Jacob Zuma from standing for public office in the May elections. The IEC announced last month that Zuma was ineligible to stand for public office under Section 47(1)(e) of the Constitution, which also regulates the membership of the National Assembly. And power utility Eskom says the electricity network remains vulnerable as the Western Cape continues to experience gale force winds, heavy rain and thunderstorms. Provincial spokesperson Kyle Cookson says parts of the network experienced structural damage, leading to loss of supply to a number of areas. I'll have details on these and other stories at 4.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's not a bad run across Gauteng highways today. The one real standout exception is the R21 South roadworks are still there as you head from Pretoria towards the airport. Just approaching Olifantsfontein at Clayville, there is already a backlog going on there, and it probably will be with us for the next few hours as well as we get into drive time in bigger volumes. Durban's got an additional lane closure on the N2 South before Spaghetti Junction. It's been really busy all day today on the run-through 4 level. At this stage, you're queuing as far back as in Nanda Road. And just off the highway, it's a real lot of pressure around Sydenham and Sparks area. Multiple routes in that part of Durban really are under some pressure. Cape Town, just an update on some of the weather-related closures. Baden-Powell Drive has been reopened, so you can go from Muizenberg to Strandfontein through Coastal Park, and you can also go through the Monwabisi side of Baden-Powell near Khayelitsha. Both sections of the roadway have been reopened, although some of the lanes are a little bit narrow because there is some sand that's just sort of creeping onto the carriageway, so please drive carefully. The M3 going south, already queuing from UCT as you make your way down towards the Rhodes Drive junction, and Hout Bay Main Road remains closed going in and out of Hout Bay. There's quite a backlog on the way into Hout Bay with queues as far back as Constantia Neck. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, to me, I don't know what you got in your sports bag, but just a quick one. I mean, Nigeria beats Banyana 1-0.
Yeah.
So, 2-leg affair for the Olympic qualifier.
Yeah.
When is the return game?
Tomorrow.
Okay, that's my answer. So it's like immediate.
It's tomorrow, and Banyana have to win.
Okay, yeah, they have to win at least one goal to go into extra time, all right?
And Nigeria must not score.
Yeah. So there's away goals. Is the away goals count double rule? I hate that rule. Okay, got that. Carry on.
All right, a very good afternoon to you. We start things off with football. Sekhukhune United coach Lehlono Siema and captain Linda Mtambo has scooped the DStv Premiership monthly awards for coach and player in February-March 2024. Siema helps Sekhukhune climb to log standings over the past 2 months. They haven't lost a match this year, and Mtambo, who has missed most of the season owing to injuries, marked his return to action with a consistent run of influential performances by scoring 3 goals and providing 2 assists in crucial victories for his side, earning his first monthly individual award in the league. This is the first time in the history of the awards that a coach or player from Sekhukhune United win an award. Elsewhere, Chelsea manager Mauricio Pochettino says that his squad lacks maturity to compete every 3 days in the Premier League. This is after they were held to a 2-2 draw by bottom side Sheffield United yesterday. Now, the Bulls have now dropped points against the Premier League's top bottom 2 teams in a space of 3 games, and Pochettino has one of the youngest squads in Europe, and he says that this explains the stop-start form, and therefore he's urged the club to buy players with capacity to provide solutions for some of the things lacking in the club.
Watching football like us, 52-year-old, you identify very quick when the team is ready to compete or not. And today that happened, maybe because this group still is not mature enough to compete every single, game every 3 days. And of course, this type of games that they are tougher, because in your preparation, because maybe like you say, relegation, Sheffield is in the relegation zone or Burnley. And it's like we need to think a little bit. I don't say that are disrespectful. But I think we need to think, like you say before. I think if I am coach, I need to think. If I am player, I need to think, which is my responsibility, how we can, be different. And
it was a very interesting weekend of football. Mr. Ashraf, did you watch the Red Devils play this weekend?
What sort of a stupid question is that? Of course I watched it. And so did all Arsenal supporters and Manchester City supporters as well.
Of course. So now Liverpool and Arsenal level on points, 71 points each. It'll be interesting to
7 games to go.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, Man United are pretty useless, although they drew. But that 18-year-old youngster is something else.
He's amazing. Absolutely amazing. But with news just coming in, Everton have been given a further 2-point deduction for breaking the profit and sustainable rules. Remember, this is the second points deduction. They were deducted 10 points. That was reduced to 6 points on appeal. And it remains to be seen whether Everton will appeal, meaning that they now drop to 16th on the table. Moving on to rugby, the Springbok Sevens interim head coach Philip Snyman believes that his charges dodged a first bullet in Hong Kong this weekend, which was an important objective for the team. The Blitzboks picked up enough lock points in Hong Kong, where they delivered their third best finish in the season so far to remain in the top 8 of the overall log and will be part of the winner-takes-all spectacle in Spain.
But the one thing, we still didn't get the full result. So we'll go back and look at ourselves, look at certain individuals, look at combinations, and then we'll hit the ground running again. Yes, we'll definitely shift the focus a little bit, because we have the opportunity now to rotate 1 or 2 players maybe, but also then one need to keep in mind, if you say we want to be consistent, is to keep continuity in the team. So 1 or 2 players might come in, look at different combinations, and definitely start focusing more on that. Still a big one for us is Madrid, and like I said, if we can get everything right, I still believe between the top 3 or between at least in that semi-finals every single tournament. So even though we're shifting our focus a little bit to the qualifiers, our next goal will be top 4 in the next tournament, nothing less than that.
Moving on to golf, Masters champion John Rahm has called for the Live Golf League to move to 72 holes, and he believes that his lucrative switch to the Breakaway Tour could prove a tipping point in the ongoing battle for the future of men's professional golf. The 29-year-old is looking forward to his Augusta title defense this week, having finished joint 4th at last week's Live event in Miami. For the first time this year, all of the world's best players will be at the same venue when the Masters tees off on Thursday. And the opening major of the 2024 calendar begins with the men's games still split as the PGA Tour explores a possible relationship with Liv's Saudi Arabian backers. With that said, it is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport.
As we said, Saudi Arabia owns everything, or that's what they plan to do.
Yeah.
As far as the Masters are concerned, by the way, it's the only tournament, I think, of the Masters, the US Masters at Augusta, which is held at the same venue every year. Mm-hmm. All the others rotate. It's a big story. I don't know why, but anyway, maybe you can tell us later on. We're going to chat to Reverend Michael Weeder. Looking forward to that conversation in a moment, which I think you're going to really enjoy. But in the meantime, I've asked your thoughts on a range of issues. You may want to comment on the John Steenhuisen story. You may want to comment on the Kigali or the Rwanda genocide 30 story, and many other things that may come up. Whatever it is, you can call in 086 000 2032. I want to have a sense of what you're feeling with regards to our national pulse. So you tell me what it is you're feeling. Lesiba's on the line. Lesiba, hi.
Hi, Ashraf, and good afternoon to Levi, your producer, and South African listeners as well.
Thank you. Now we all know you. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yes. You see, Ashraf, I think John Steenhuisen is quite correct, and we can't even blame him because he was talking to his own audience, which is the white people. I'm very disappointed. I don't know how long, what it would take for the black people, the Indian and the color to understand that Democratic Alliance is a white people's organization. These people who are still following it, they don't want to accept, because Musi Maimane have said it clear, Herman Mashaba said it clear, Bogingos in the Western Cape, they've said, all of them, they've said it when they left Democratic Alliance, that is the party for the white people. So it's about time we accept in the run-up to these elections to understand, because you can't say the Western Cape belonged to Democratic Alliance. So it was wrong, it was completely wrong, and all the political parties are in the pack in a moonshot pact with the D8. They must just get out because the D8 will use them during the elections, during the formation party will take over. So ANC, as a ruling party in 8 provinces, Ashra, can you imagine ANC blaming other parties when they are campaigning in the traditional province that belong to the ANC? That would be wrong. South Africa is a democratic country. Everybody is allowed to campaign. No go area in South Africa. Let the people campaign the way they want to campaign. Let the people choose. We are a liberation movement.
But now you initially said he's right because he's talking to his audience. Then he said nobody has got the right to tell anybody which constituency to contest or which region. So you're saying two different things. I mean, and the reality is regarding that event of the weekend. In fact, the crowd was not predominantly white. It was a predominantly coloured crowd. But the reality is, when he's actually speaking to the other parties, he's not speaking to the audience that they're all DA supporters. He's speaking to the other parties. Because remember, it's not who's in the audience. National radio and television allows him to address and social media like on the X.com platform allows him to speak to an entire nation in one fell swoop. And that's exactly what he's done. Yeah,
I agree, but that they are showing the true colors. They have always been like this, but you, the media, were refusing when we labeled them as a racist organization. The fact that they were speaking to the colored communities is for up to the colored communities to realize that this party has been using them. Look at the Western Cape. Go to colored community areas. You will see that there is no service delivery. In white type of areas, there is service delivery. For these people, they must just make sure that they leave this party belonging to the white people, go to the traditional parties and make sure that they make their political contribution there. Let them leave the DA as well. I'm correct on this one. It's a racist organization.
Right, points taken. Let's get another voice note. Okay, well, let's...
Sharp, this time from Fontaine. Why is the DA so scared about other political parties contesting Western Cape with them? They know that they have not been doing a good job to the majority of the Western Cape citizens, the colours and the blacks. So they are scared that they might be voted out. And remember, there have been complaints about the DA from Nyanga, Langa, Kukuletu, and other Cape Flats, Hanover Park, and other areas in the Western Cape. So they are so scared that they might lose power. So everyone has a right to contest everywhere. So why they are commenting like this? Why are they so scared? Watch the space. They might lose Western Cape, Ashraf.
Well, for me, it's not even about whether they're scared. Of course they're scared. Everybody's scared. The ANC is scared. The EFF is scared. The DA is scared. Everybody's scared, right? The point is, how do you actually tell other parties, like, don't enter our turf? And I mean, for me, that's my fundamental point. You cannot tell. It's an undemocratic stance to say, do not enter our turf. Leave us alone. Like, effectively, we run the space here. You can't do that. In fact, we'll get further comment on the John Steenhuisen issue, I think after 4 o'clock. Looking forward to that conversation with a political analyst. Here's an interesting one. I see one of the listeners, and I'm not too sure who it is, saying, what sort of a stupid question is that on national radio? Did he make a mistake or did he actually mean that? To me, he might have laughed, but he had no right to utter such words. He must just apologize to the listeners. Such language is unacceptable here at SAFM. Clearly, you're misreading the mood here. Of course, we're laughing at each other because Tumi's teasing me about Man United, and my response to say what stupid question means, of course I'm watching that. So hopefully you get that. We have lots of fun here on air and off air, and that reflects that because we can actually laugh at each other because she's really teasing me about my really poor, underperforming Man United team. Hopefully you get that, okay? All right. I think we should be chatting to the Reverend Michael Wheeler shortly, but I think we are struggling to connect with him. By the way, so further comments on the Rwandan genocide and maybe the comments made by Paul Kagame, and his point about, and I'm paraphrasing, you can't push up hatred, you can't push up hate speech, you can't other people. Remember, with regard to the Tutsis, they were called cockroaches in Rwanda. That sparked of this whole genocide of 1 million people dying. be careful what you say. You have any thoughts on the lessons of that, like being very careful what we say with regard to othering people and harboring hatred and encouraging hatred? Because even if you dislike, it's amazing how far that can go when others take the heed of what you're suggesting. The other thing on a more lighter note, if I can call it that, I'd love to know where you're working. I mean, wherever you are right now, like what sort of work do you do? So perhaps why don't you drop me a WhatsApp in text form, or you could even send a picture, right, to 0614 104 107, like of you in your workspace. I'd love to know where you're working, and maybe a quick one-liner. Hi, I'm so-and-so, this is what I do, and this is where I'm working from, because I'd love to know. And you can also tweet us on the X platform at SAFM Radio, and do tag me at Ashraf Garda, and use the hashtag #TheNationalPulse. We'll also get an update on the atrocious weather we've been experiencing around the country and what that really means. And we'll do that after this.
Join model and TV personality Dr. Fezile and Dr. Anesu on Top Travel. Allow yourself to be taken on an exhilarating journey across Africa, redefining travel at its finest on our very own home turf. From the rolling green hills of the Eastern Cape to the breathtaking sapphire waters of the Kenyan coastline, the duo explores the diverse landscapes and cultures of the continent we call home. Channel your inner adventurer with Top Travel. Start Saturday the 23rd of March at 8:30 p.m. only on
Banyana. African champions and top 16 team in the world are in action on Tuesday, the 9th of April at the Loftus Versfeld Stadium at 7:30 p.m. They are on the road to the Paris 2024 Olympic qualifiers as they face Nigeria for the last spot in the Olympics. Join us to #FillUpLoftus. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro at 50 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children under 12 and scholars in uniform. You can also watch the match live on SABC Sports on DTT Channel 4 at 7 p.m. For more details, visit safa.net and Banyana_Banyana on X.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
I'm unprepared for this rapid fire. I'm just going to put that out there as a disclaimer. The thought just came to my mind right now. If you had to have dinner with one person, who would it be?
Rihanna. She's fabulous, and she also has like a great business ethic. She needs to teach me a lot of things.
Right? Okay. If there was one piece of advice that you would not listen to.
Oh, that's a hard one. You know, when I first came out, there was a whole thing of you're not special, you know, things happen to everyone. I would not take that advice. We are special. I believe in being delusional. Delusion will get you far. Believe that you are special and that you are meant to be at a higher place, and then things will happen for you.
That was Miss Universe, Zozibini Tunzi.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
There's another WhatsApp. Why don't you talk about Ghalib Kachalia and the DA treatment of him from Frank? What do we want to talk about him? I mean, you tell me what is it we must talk about him when we're talking about the DA specifically in with pronouncements from its leader like that just happened at the weekend. Which one's more current? Am I missing something? You tell me. What's also current, by the way, well, keep those comments about where you work, which city you reside, town, and what's the work you do. I'd love to know. We are getting some of those messages coming in via text or voice notes. 0614 104 107. Pictures are most welcome. Pictures of the atrocious weather at the weekend, particularly in the Western Cape, and then Limpopo as well. Phew. Did you see that picture of that caravan detached from the car? Thank goodness, I think in time. What is it called? The Huguenot Tunnel, I think it is, around that area. And that entire caravan just tumbled over. Wow. Lekhlonolo Tobela is with me from the South African Weather Service. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Good. I gather you're going to be inundated, and you have been inundated regarding what's happened with our weather. So what's happened with our weather?
Yeah, we have a weather system. It's common in April that you have a cut-off low system. I mean, the last time it was here, I think you saw what it brought about the flooding over KwaZulu-Natal. And the system was in conjunction with the coastal low pressure system that put much more of the rain over the east coast of KwaZulu-Natal the last time it happened. But now it was over the southwestern areas for the weekend, and it brought about cold conditions, but not only cold. resulted to very strong winds with the gradient, as it was assisted by another surface system called the surface trough over the western interior, which then increased the wind speed with the pressure gradient being very tight, and which resulted in some fell fires in some areas. Some roofs were removed, and it was heavy rain in some parts of the western, or rather the eastern Cape, and parts of the central part. It resulted in severe thunderstorms, which resulted in heavy rain. I mean, Free State was showing a number of high water depth with millimeters ranging about 50 to about 70 millimeters of rain. Kronstadt was showing severe heavy rain, well, rather I'd say heavy downpours that resulted in flooding. So yes, the system was bringing about colder conditions. If in Gauteng you saw cloudy conditions for the past 2 days over the weekend, and it was just rain, and parts of the areas were cold, others were saying they're cool.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so you're saying it's par for the course. It's this time of the year we should expect that. But now, why do I gather that the winds in the Western Cape appear to be far worse than I've seen, like, forever?
Yeah, I mean, we had a system that was in conjunction with the surface system, what's called the low-pressure system. And then in the upper area, the cut-off low, which together were having much more of the energy, and the pressure gradient along the area was quite high, in a sense that the wind speeds were, I mean, we had gusts that were about 120 to 140 kilometers per hour. And the wind speed in general that were averaging around 60 kilometers per hour for the occurrence, or for as long as the system was there.
Okay, and in terms of the continued adverse conditions, how long is this expected to last now?
Yeah, we're expecting the system to die out by Wednesday as it moves further east and moves south. There's a cold front that comes along the south and the east coast of the country, and most of the activities, I mean, we already have isolated a scattered chance of showers and rain that's expected on Wednesday, especially over the central and the eastern parts of the Western Cape province. The east coast of the Eastern Cape and most of the central parts expected to be cold, with an isolated scattered chance of showers and rain still expected with that cold front as it moves further east. And the cut-off low then is expected to slip south of the country. So we're expecting Wednesday to Thursday to start improving as opposed to what we experienced throughout the weekend, especially over the southern parts. Central and the northern areas, which would include the central provinces, we're expecting the improvement by Wednesday. It should just be partly cloudy and cool to warm. Warmer in the northern parts of the Northern Cape, but Gauteng can definitely see nothing of precipitation on Wednesday into Thursday.
Okay, and at the same time, I take it that the temperatures that have now dipped may well remain dipped as we move, full into autumn and the onset of winter, or not?
We're expecting a mild winter, with seasonal forecast suggesting that the temperatures would remain above normal for both the maximum and the minimum temperatures for the remainder of the winter, or rather, let's say, the April, May, June. We're still expecting above normal temperatures. However, with the system like a cut-off low, it tends to definitely lower the temperatures whenever it moves over. So with the systems that are yet to come, for as long as we're still in April into the winter, we are yet to see a cooling or a drop in temperatures now and again. But in average, we're expecting above normal temperatures, the maximum and the minimum temperatures country-wide.
And that's where we can leave it. Lekhlagonolo Tobela from the South African Weather Service, appreciate your time there. So there you are, horrific conditions. And I've seen many, many pictures. If you have any further pictures that you've got, send them over. Love to see them. But, I mean, it's almost like bad news, see them. But we'll be happy to share that as well. You can WhatsApp us to 0614 104 107. You can watch us on live streaming now if you go to SAFM or even on the X platform and you find SAFM Radio. You'll see me visually, and I'm giving you a thumbs up if you're watching us right now. Hope you're enjoying the show. Really, our plan here, and that's why we call the show The National Pulse, is to reflect the national pulse of the country and to give you the type of information that you need so you can get a good feel of the national pulse at the same time that's you and I and the entire country, hopefully can shift the needle from where we are as a country, solve the big problems we have, address them, ask the questions, and hopefully move us one step closer to becoming a champion nation. Got that? I mean, all those things in one. There's a couple more. I'll get to some voice notes now. Many people responding around the weather and other things. Here's an interesting one. Good day. I'm Mark, and I'm listening from Mossel Bay in the Western Cape, DAA town, and I'm a security officer doing armed response. And maybe one day must come and visit this town. Thank you for the nice program. I would love to come to Mossel Bay. I've been close by. I think I've been there once, actually, okay, coming from PE, driving down to Cape Town, but that's not enough, right? There's another one. Truth is, Johnny is 100% correct. There's no need to fix something that's not broken. Western Cape is in capable hands and should stay that way. True, all the other provinces are IMS, okay? That's from Zizi in PE. Zizi, you see, your point is interesting. The point is, I would concur that it appears that the Western Cape is better run than the other 8 provinces. They also made the point, I think, that the Premier said that's why people are migrating or semigrating to the Western Cape. Now, I understand that, okay? It doesn't mean it's perfect, but maybe they're doing a better job than others. But by doing a better job than others, that is why, come election time, they should have no problem being voted in again, because the voters in that region will say, that's the party we vote for because they are ensuring that we live a better life. What you can't do and what you should not do and what you have no right to do really is to tell the other parties that have now decided to contest your space why contest the space and stay out effectively. I mean, that's the point I made earlier on. Like, that's the principle. Let's look at it in football terms. Remember those Kaiser Chiefs and Orlando Pirates in South Africa? Then Mamelodi Sundowns came on board and then became the dominant force. Can you imagine Chiefs and Pirates telling Sundowns, stay out of this league, we run the show here. You know what? We the team. The supporters support us. We don't want you here. Leave all your money alone. We can't do that, because that means that even if you are in business, and if you are selling apples, and if I want to sell apples, you're going to prevent me selling apples because I'm going to take all your customers away. Why don't you do a better job? Just do a better job selling apples. And even if I want to sell apples, customers will go to you. So here's the point. If the DA is doing a great job in the Western Cape, great for them. Then they should be able to challenge and ensure that they win the Western Cape and perhaps do even better around the country by virtue of what they've done in the Western Cape. The converse, as somebody else has said, can you imagine we telling the DA to not contest the other 8 provinces then? Because it's not your business. But the point made was there will be a cash heist, openly suggesting the other parties, not the ANC, the other parties are contesting the election only because they want to get their hands on the money and abuse that. And I don't think he's got any proof to make that comment. And that's the point. Let's get to Lee from Cape Town. Hi, Lee.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for calling in and for being part of the National Pulse.
Yes, and thank you for taking my call. On to Mr. Steenhuisen. Mr. Steenhuisen sounds and echoes the very same sentiments of the people that they serve and the very same people that funded them. You understand? This delusional idea that the Western Cape is functioning perfectly is one that is entrenched in such deep racism that when you've served a particular demographic in the Western Cape, you have served and you have served completely. To ignore the fact that the DA has not looked at the needs of black people in the Western Cape and to continue to echo this loud statement about the success of the DA in the Western Cape and in Cape Town is a deeply intrinsically racist statement.
But here's the point. I'm going to interject you because we're on to news time. Okay, here's the big point. Let's assume they're the best run province in the country. I'm not debating that. Let's say it may or may not be true. My bigger point.
They do say that.
My point, and in 15 seconds here for you, is just the bigger point I have an issue with is actually telling the other party to stay out. So even if you're the best run, you don't have the right to tell another party not to contest an election. That's the issue, isn't it?
But it is that colonial mindset. It is that colonial mindset that when we have come, we will conquer and you will no longer belong.
Okay.
Who is to tell the DA that they own and they are the only people that have access and rights to the Western Cape? And that is why they're economically driving out the big black people out of this province.
All right. Lee, let's leave it at that. Thanks for that call. Certainly enjoy talking to you about that, raising an important issue, and others, I believe, concur. Does anybody else totally disagree with that? You tell me about it. Let's, however, get the news. There's a developing story taking place with Luyanda Naome.
Thank you, Ashraf. In your top stories, politicians cautioned against peddling misinformation this election year, and Eskom gives update of its systems in the Western Cape. This is SAFM News. A very good afternoon. Let's start with some election-related news now. The University of Johannesburg's Professor Atmaya Mare says politicians are not immune from spreading misinformation. Mare, who's a professor at the UJ Communications Department, was speaking at the multi-sectoral dialogue focusing on misinformation ahead of the upcoming elections in Sandton today. The multi-sectoral engagement aims to inform the public about the dangers of misinformation. Mare says politicians and all political parties can at times dissuade voters from casting their ballots.
And oftentimes politicians, political parties, even individuals themselves actually become conveyor belts of actually pushing out these disinformation campaigns as a way sometimes to delegitimize the whole process, to discredit the whole process, sometimes even to dissuade voters from actually going out and casting out their votes.
Counsel for the Umkhonto weSizwe Party has argued that the Independent Electoral Commission acted outside of its jurisdiction when it upheld the objection that disqualifies former President Jacob Zuma from standing for public office in May elections. The IEC announced last month that Zuma was ineligible to stand for public office under the Section 47(1)(e) of the Constitution, which also regulates the membership of the National Assembly. However, Advocate Dalimpofu says the Commission is not the correct organ to invoke the section as it flies in the face of the separation of powers doctrine. Mpofu argues that it is only the National Assembly that has the power to regulate this membership. He delivered this argument before the Electoral Court.
The IEC does not have or must show this court, in terms of the factual case, the IEC must tell this court where it gets the authority to implement Section 47. And the answer is nowhere. And the quotation I put there from Baxter is very important. You don't say when you apply the rule of law, well, we can do everything that we are not prohibited from doing. No, it doesn't work like that. It says we can only do those things that we are authorized by law to do.
Meanwhile, scores of Umkhonto weSizwe Party members converged on the Gauteng High Court in Johannesburg in support of Jacob Zuma's bid to be allowed to stand as a candidate in the May elections. Dressed in the party's green, black and gold regalia, the members sang struggle songs and danced as counsel for the MK Party and the IEC squared off on the matter. Zuma had been barred from standing by the Electoral Commission due to his 15-month conviction for contempt of court in June 2021. Amongst those outside the court was Black First Land First leader Andile Mnqathama.
Black First Land First has joined up with Umkhonto weSizwe. We are voting for them in these coming elections. We want the 2/3 majority. We want to return the program of radical economic transformation of Jacob Zuma, which was disrupted midstream. We believe that is the way forward for this country, to return the land, to also participate in the economy, to get a minimum wage, to address reparations for Marikana and make sure that there's free education. Those things are the big demands that President Zuma was putting on the table.
On to this developing story now. The city of Cape Town says there has been 28 incidents of roof damage to property due to high winds and inclement weather this past weekend. The Weather Services is predicting an 80% chance of rain later today, but that the extreme windy conditions will, however, subside. Mayoral Committee member for Safety and Security, J.P. Smith, says the Cape Winelands and the Overberg, Strand and Somerset West have been hardest hit.
That ranged from Delft to Mitchells Plain, Khayelitsha, Blue Down, Somerset West, and some commercial properties in the Strand. There were also reports this morning of damage in New Zone in Nomzamo, where at least 13 structures have been affected. We had a large number of trees down citywide, with Recreation and Parks attending to the tree damage.
And finally, power utility Eskom says the electricity network remains vulnerable as the Western Cape continues to experience gale force winds, heavy rain and thunderstorms. Provincial spokesperson Kyle Cookson says part of the network experienced structural damages, leading to loss of supply to a number of areas. He says this has created challenges for electricity restoration efforts, creating a backlog.
Extreme weather conditions have led to multiple faults across the Western Cape province, leaving some of its customers without electricity supply. The areas affected are Beaufort West, Kraaifontein, Khayelitsha, Grava and surrounding farms, Kylmore, Gordons Bay, Salauri Spas, Somerset West, Stellenbosch Farms and Vredendal. Eskom urges customers to remain patient and to make use of the Alpha chatbot to log their faults.
Recapping your top story, the University of Johannesburg's Professor Admaya Mare says politicians are not immune from spreading misinformation. This as South Africa prepares for a high-stakes general election next month. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 4:30.
In sports, Squan Maga shines at national champs. Rivera happy with Mabaza's form, and Verstappen questions choice of sprint format in China. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Don't get caught in this one. It's the R21. We enter a new week, but the result's still the same. In fact, it may be a little bit worse than you might be expecting than you've driven through for the last few weeks. It's the roadworks on the R21 South approaching Olifantsfontein Road at Clayville. That is already a very heavy backlog into the construction. And, of course, rush hour volume's only really just kicking off, so things starting to pick up from here. If you're airport bound from Pretoria, make sure you've got probably an extra 30 or 40 minutes just to be safe of getting through and maintaining your arrival time. William Mandela is quite heavy today from Brighton and across the highway up as far as Monte Casino Boulevard. Durban, Sparks and Sydenham been very busy. A lot of traffic congestion in that part of town today. A couple of breakdowns just south of Pietermaritzburg have just been cleared, so that's a route towards Durban that's busy recovering. And Cape Town Baden-Powell Drive along the coast has been open at Coastal Park and opened at Momobisi after closures over the weekend and this morning due to the severe weather and the sand. So you can use Baden-Powell, but there is still some sand and narrowing of the lanes in places. And Hout Bay Main closed going in and out of Hout Bay. There's quite a backlog going inbound with a big volume, so expect some queues just south of Constantia Neck. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
Star-crossed meetings between wild animals and people sometimes happen. In fact, they happen more often than we think. Some very special people in Africa find themselves in these highly unusual friendships, and they wouldn't change it for the world. The only word that can really describe what they're experiencing is love. We follow these poignant stories and show the rest of the world how love goes wild. Channel your best adventure with Love Goes Wild, weekdays at 4:30 p.m. only on S3.
And we will buy 500 cars and we will buy 500 more just to be the one who buys your car. Will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Banyana Banyana. African champions and top 16 team in the world are in action on Tuesday, the 9th of April at the Loftus Versfeld Stadium at 7:30 p.m. They are on the road to the Paris 2024 Olympic qualifiers as they face Nigeria for the last spot in the Olympics. Join us to #PhilipLoftus. Tickets are available at Ticket Pro at 50 Rand for adults and 20 Rand for children under 12 and scholars in uniform. You can also watch the match live on SABC Sports on DTT Channel 4 at 7 p.m. For more details, visit safa.net and Banyana_Banyana on X.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, thanks for joining me and getting a feel of the national pulse. And we're certainly getting a feel of it every single day, from what's happening in with regard to the DA pronouncements over the weekend in Cape Town to former President Jacob Zuma effectively fighting for his political life. In fact, that case, judgment now has been just how that. We'll see when they're going to actually pass judgment. It could be tomorrow, maybe the next day. I don't know. We'll see about that. But former President Jacob Zuma, in fact, has been speaking to the crowds outside the courthouse, and he's saying that I did not finish my full term, the second term, and therefore, certain issues around that gives me legal right to continue to be an MP in this case here. Where do you stand in this? I mean, I don't mean legally, because legally let them pronounce on it, okay? But where do your sentiments lie? There's a legal side and there's a sentimental side. Where do your sentiments lie? If former President Jacob Zuma wants to stand for the MK party, do you think it's okay the fact that he spent some time in prison, do you think it's okay to let him just stand and not anger his supporters? And if he wants, and if he gets into Parliament, that's great as well. And maybe they got 10 seats or 5 seats or 50 seats. I don't let him get into Parliament. Or do you think no? And I'm not talking about the law. I'm talking sentimentally. Do you think no? I don't want to see him in Parliament, no matter what. So no favors to him. He should not be there. Any thoughts on that? And I'd love you to share those opinions. And as always, you've got many ways to do so. You can tweet it out via Twitter. Just tag on the X platform. Tag SFM Radio, tag me as well. You can call in 086 000 2032 and WhatsApp, text or voice notes 0614 104 107. I've also asked questions about where they are and what work you do. Tell me what work is it that you're doing and where you are in the country, so I get a good sense of exactly where you are. We're going to pay lots of attention to the disasters and the impact of that from the Western Cape to Mangaung, that has taken place over the weekend, and what that really means for you and I, being very, very concerned about property and land and roads. We'll talk about that pretty shortly. But do feel free to connect with me on any of the issues that you really want to get off your chest. Also, I know there's been a few further voice notes around John Steenhuisen. But here's the question to you, not even in political speak, in pure business speak, okay? Have you ever had a situation where you tried to start a business, okay, and were prevented, well, not prevented, someone then suggested you have no right to start a restaurant because I've got a better restaurant than you and I'm very successful. Has that ever happened to you? I'm saying restaurant, but it could be any other business that you were told not to start another business because X is doing a better job than you, and you either went and started it anyway, what happened to you, or you actually took the advice or their threats and you stayed out of that turf and didn't open that business there. If that's the case, then I certainly want to know from you. Let's, however, get to the issues of the disaster that South Africa's experienced regard weather over the weekend and what that really means for you and I. First up, we're going to go to understand what's happened in the Free State region in Mangaung. From the Mangaung Metro, the spokesperson there is Kondile Khidama. Kondile, thanks for your time and welcome to the National Pulse.
Thanks, Ashraf, and welcome to your new slot.
Much appreciated. Right, what has happened now? I mean, since the last couple of days, maybe just set some scene for us in terms of what's happened and what may happen in the future.
Look, the downpours have been continuous since Friday, and we have really encountered quite a lot of rain. And as a result, Ashraf, you should be knowing by now that we have a potential sometimes of disrupting the services, but to date we have been able to execute our responsibilities as the municipality. And the only challenge that is there, it is the closure of one of our bridges that incurs quite serious waterlock during rains. But I know for a fact that as administration we are working towards a permanent solution to Dr. Belcher. I've encouraged members of the community that are using the road, the hotel and the bridge itself to use alternative roads until such time that we have been able to put in a measure like sucking water and making sure that it's user friendly.
And therefore, I mean, clearly communities have suffered. They've been displaced. It's going to impact on them, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. It has got the bridge itself has got an impact because it's located in one of our main streets that gets straight into the CBD, and as a result, especially for public transport, it has got a negative impact. But we are working on it. Look, it happens often, but I know for the fact that our engineering services is on it and in making sure that we deal with the structure itself and making sure that we give it an integrity and a permanent solution.
How? I mean, you did say, I mean, they're working on it. How soon is it likely to be, fixed to the point where it can be used again?
Look, because the South African Services given us a notice of level 6, which is better than what we've encountered yesterday and maybe today. So as soon as the rain subsides, our teams should be able to do their work and they are quick in dealing with that because we understand the impact that it has in terms of operations and making sure that people are are commuting in and out of the CBD of Mangaung.
So those that use that route where the bridge has collapsed, I mean, what's the alternative right now?
Well, the structure still has integrity. Ours is just to make sure that our engineers find a permanent solution, especially on the concrete itself, making sure that because there are pumps that are located there. But Ashraf, I didn't want to push you to a point of telling you that one of the things that has been a problem is that those pumps were stolen, and they are being stolen, and so we are bringing one. The structure that will save that, the pumps themselves, but also one of the things that the mayor would always say is that making sure that we touch our infrastructure. If there's a need for us to put physical security, that's exactly what we'll do, because the mayor is very sensitive into the security of our infrastructure, including our water reservoir. She's been saying throughout that there must be given necessary attention when it comes to security.
Okay, there's a call. So stay on the line, Kondile. There's a call from Bramoro in the Mangaung region. He wants to put a question to you. So go ahead, Bramoro.
Thank you, Mr. Ashraf. Welcome back to the big show.
Much appreciated. Leave the Mr. out. Just Ashraf. Ashraf's fine.
No problem. You are over my age, so let me just use the title again.
There we are.
Thank you. Mr. Kedama, thank you. But unfortunately, we cannot say you are doing a perfect job. We are in Bloemfontein. You are right. During summer season, we all know the flooding point. There is nothing that the municipality does. We don't have to sit and wait for it to rain before we start blocking road and we pretend that we are fixing things. Honestly, we've passed this stage. Let's check Harvey Road. There is a very busy bridge there. Whenever it's raining, even if a child even pee, it flooded the whole area. You understand? They are unfinished business that the metro needs to do. But nothing. Like today, you are on the radio. I bet you next year we're still going to be sitting talking about the very same issue. What the metro is busy doing is just towing people's car in unparked areas. That is what the metro is busy doing. Even now that it's busy raining, there is nothing that the metro has done to resolve this flooding crisis. The whole city, even we can go to the white suburb, the black suburb, etc. For the past 10 years, there is nothing that has been done to address flooding in Mangaung. We can, Ashraf, let's put today's date and next year, call Mr. Kedama, let him give you a progress report on the current flooding situation in the city of Mangaung. It will still be the very same story. So I ask him, why can't the metro engineers be on their toes when it's summer season, when there is no single rain? That is when they'll be able to probably redirect some of the...
But let's get him to answer the question, okay? So, Brahmos, stay on the line, right? Kondile?
Now, I'm listening to Pichoff. Pichoff is making a point, but what he doesn't understand is that, one, the project management process is not an overnight thing. And when you're talking of a bridge, you're not talking of a normal road that you do. And there's work that we started last year. Councillor Wishes of MMC, responsible for engineering services, has put a plan in place together with his team and the HOD then, the Timasube. One of the things that the executive mayor, together with the MMC, have been able to do, it is to open a road in Sorianche that has serious impact in terms of the traffic that comes to the CBD and other areas within the city itself. That was open, and it's one of the projects that we actually pride ourselves because it took quite some time. We're doing it with the national department. The access roads, Ashraf, you to know that when it's raining, they'll always have the rain will always have an impact on the integrity of the site itself. So when it rains, we need to make sure that there's a follow-up plan that we will roll out. Now,
and you have a follow-up plan? I mean that's what they're saying. The rains will always come, right? So will there be a follow-up plan?
Oh, definitely. There is a plan. Okay. There will be a follow-up. But what is important, and that I think applies to most metros, if not municipalities, is that once you encounter severe rains, it has got an impact not only on the road, Ashraf, even on settlements, even on the business of the day. And that is critical to us because we have to make sure that we put the contingency plans in place our systems are in place in a form of disaster management team. You might have seen that in the notice that we've just issued out, the emergency numbers that our people can use, or members of the community. We have also put in the cell number where people can use the 068-483-8294 number that they can use in case of emergency, because it is in the interest of the leadership of the city to make sure that at least people are not 100% inconvenienced.
Well, absolutely. And I think, as the point from the caller, they need to hold you to it, and hopefully all of you deliver on their behalf, because ultimately it is about serving the people. Kondile Kedama, thanks for your time, spokesperson for the Mangaung Metro. Good chatting to you after a long, long time. Let's get to Johannesburg now and find out what's happening in that city. It's certainly been very, very overcast and lots of rain this morning, and suggestions of flooding. Certainly where I'm sitting in Joburg outside my home, I saw certainly high levels of water, but flooding, no. So how bad is it in Joburg? Nana Khadebe Khiba is the spokesperson for the Joburg Emergency Services. Nana, I appreciate your time. Nana, hi.
Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you. So what's the state of Joburg? Bad weather, but not disaster, or not?
Fortunately, we've not had any major or even smaller incidents. We've been very fortunate because it's been raining and stopping, so we've not had any flash floods or any major accidents.
Okay, so so that's very, very good news. And in terms of the weather conditions over the next few days, is there anything to suggest that we could have problems down the line?
Not as yet. We have been given a level 2 alert, but we're not worried for now. We've not had any flooding alerts as yet, and the rain seems to be subsiding. We're just hoping the next coming days it doesn't continue like the past few days.
And if it does, here's the point that was put to the spokesperson for Mangaung, right? Residents are always concerned that the metros are not geared for emergency services. So hoping it doesn't happen, but if it does happen, what's your fallback in terms of providing the support for the city of Joburg?
We have our aquatic units. In Johannesburg, we deal mostly, our problem is low-lying areas where Cascade crosses. This is parts of Alexandra and also Deep Sloot. We have aquatic units which would go if in case we have drownings. And we have disaster management that will assist people in case of any floodings. We have houses that flood, mostly around Soweto, also in Deep Sloot, and also around Orange Farm, where you'd have houses that flood. Then there will need to be assisted. Then disaster management would also come into play and assist those people and give them temporary housing.
Okay.
And the requirements what they need for the day.
And let's hope it doesn't happen. Thanks for that contribution, Nana Khadebe Khiba, the spokesperson for the Joburg Emergency Services. We'll now get to the Western Cape. By the way, there's a couple of messages. Action SA will do a better job in the Western Cape, especially for the people that live in the Cape Flats. And another one, the Taxi Association, Kodeta, once tried to stop my city bus from operating in Khayelitsha, not thinking about commuters. That relates to my question, picking up from John Steenhuisen, whether in fact you've been ever told to stay out of a certain space when you're trying to open up a business, maybe. Okay, let's get to Colin Diner, who's the head of the Western Cape Disaster Management. Colin, good afternoon. Appreciate your time.
Good afternoon, and to your listeners, Ashraf.
Thank you. So what I saw about your region was horrific and really scary. Where are you now?
Yeah, so yes, at the moment it's raining. It's still raining in Cape Town. The weather warning for a level 9 still holds, and that holds until 12 o'clock tonight. So at the moment we are still seeing quite a lot of rain in the inland of the Western Cape province, the Overberg region, the Cape Winelands. So that's where we're keeping our eye on now. Fortunately, the winds have subsided quite substantially, because that was really our big problem up to now.
So in terms of disaster, what has happened? I hear about like 500 homes affected. Give us the numbers in terms of what has actually happened.
Yeah, so maybe just to take you back, we got a warning on Friday from South African Weather Services around strong winds and then very heavy rainfall, and that was upgraded on Saturday morning. So then through Saturday night and then mostly yesterday, we got massive winds in some areas to 150 kilometers an hour. In fact, there was a wind gust measured on the west coast of almost 300 kilometers an hour. Then what happened was it started 14 fires across the province. So we had fires in the South Peninsula, in Glenkern, Clovelly, in that area. And then we had fires up north, more towards the Drakenstein area. We lost about 200 shacks in an informal settlement in Kayamandi, which is near Stellenbosch. 1,000 people were displaced there. And then with the strong winds yesterday, we had 2 areas in Luandle and Nzomo that were destroyed. So about 1,500 people left homeless there. And then we've got, all over the place. So it's a very wide-ranging incident that we're dealing with. There's a very old historical house burnt down as well, manor house.
I certainly saw that. Yeah. Anything else? I mean, you can tell us in terms of support and concerns that the residents or the citizens of that region need to know.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to keep an eye on the media. There will be another announcement later this afternoon. What we decided to do on Sunday was to close the schools in the level 9 area. So it's not the entire province, but basically the Overberg, the Cape Wineland, and the Helderberg Basin area, just because of the very high winds, the dangerous roads, the damage possible to schools. There will be an announcement a bit later by the Premier around whether, what will be the status for tomorrow. So keep your ear open for that. What we are saying is for the most of today, or for the rest of today and most of tomorrow, if you don't need to travel, don't travel. It's dangerous. There's a lot of wind. There's a lot of water about. So it would much rather be, if you don't have to go anywhere, is to just stay safe.
Stay at home. That's the bottom line. Colin, let's see that. Colin Dana, thanks for your time. Head of the Western Cape Disaster Management, saying, really, if you don't have to travel, do not travel. He's talking about the Western Cape, of course, right? Well, what about the journey of President Zuma, former President Zuma, and his own political ambitions and the MK? Let's get further thoughts on what may come out of that court case that took place today and in terms of potential judgment and implications thereof with Professor Dirk Kotze, who's a political scientist based at UNISA. Prof. Kotze, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Right. You may have seen some of the utterances today in court. Anything you'd like to pick out from there?
Well, I think it has become very much a technical legal debate or contestation about what actually happened with President Zuma and to what extent the fact that he didn't serve the complete term of his parole period, that whether that means that it's exonerating from the limitations of Section 47 of the Constitution, which was disqualifying as a candidate in this election.
And he made the point that having not finished his term, and your thoughts around the technicality of that, does that play in his favour now in terms of potentially having his image on that ballot sheet?
No, I don't think it does, because I think what should be the dominant factor to focus on is what Section 47 of the Constitution is saying. And it is saying that any person who is sentenced for longer than 12 months and who has not yet completed the period of 5 years since the end of that sentence will be disqualified as a member or as a candidate for Parliament. Now, what he refers to President Zuma is that in August last year, President Ramaphosa gave him a presidential pardon, which is incorrect. It is a presidential remission.
What's the difference? You got about a minute, right, to explain. What's the difference?
Yeah. Remission is it's an early release. It is for non-violent offences, and it's normally for people who are on parole. While pardon is for someone who has already been released from serving the entire sentence, and then have been 5 years already outside prison, and during that 5 years didn't commit any offences.
Okay.
Then they will be exonerated from a criminal record, and none of that is applicable in this case.
Okay. And where do you think this will finally land up? I mean, it's difficult to ask you to be the judge, but I mean, having said that, what do you think?
I think the position of the IEC will be sustained, and that is that direct interpretation of Section 47 disqualifies President Zuma from being a candidate. And I think that will be the correct interpretation.
All right. Now, outside the legal issue, right, what about the sentimental issue to say, we don't want trouble, man. Let them just contest the election. They're not going to win anything anyway. They may get X amount of percentage. But if Zuma's prevented from being, contesting, you're just creating an uproar from his supporters, and who knows what may happen then. What's your thoughts on that in 30 seconds?
Well, the court shouldn't consider that. The representative of MK, I attended it late last week, Thursday at Gallagher Estates. He pledged that they will not engage in any form of violence or disruption of the election, and therefore it is not something that is justified. Once there's a court judgment, they must adhere to it.
Okay, that's where we can leave it. Professor Dirkot, so thanks for your time. And let's see finally what happens with that issue. It's a very, very important issue ahead of the May 29 election. As always, your opinion on that matters. Voice notes 061 104 107. What do you make of that? Get your fingers on the national pulse. It's now 4:30. Here's the news headlines with Luyanda.
Thank you, Ashraf. In your headlines, judgment has been reserved in the Umkhonto weSizwe Party's appeal to the IEC's decision to uphold objections against former President Jacob Zuma. The Electoral Court says it will issue an order electronically at 2 p.m. tomorrow. University of Johannesburg's Professor Atmaya Mare says politicians are not immune from spreading misinformation. Mare, who's a professor at UJ Communications Department, was speaking at the multi-sectoral dialogue focusing on misinformation ahead of the upcoming elections in Sandton. And the Southern African Development Community has lost 3 of its soldiers and 3 others got injured in the DRC. The incident happened when a mortar round fell near the camp where they were staying, and the soldiers who died and sustained injuries are from Tanzania. Details on these and other stories at 5 with Mudupi Makhalimele. For SAFM News, my name is Luyanda Maume and I'm out.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Just a reminder, if you're just joining us, the R21 leaving Pretoria for those flight connections at OR Tambo is heavily backed up. It's a little bit different today than it was last week. Last week it was slow, but you got a gap from the real heavy stuff. But we're back into that heavy queue today across all lanes. Big traffic, R21 approaching the Oliphant-Fontaine Road exit and the construction. Also, Greyston Drive leaving Sandton's backed up, a crash near Catherine Street. So if you're coming out of Sandton from Rivonia Road, that's all very slow. Durban, the breakdowns at Ashburton and Umlas Road are finally being cleared away. That backlog has eased. Bottom of the M4 Southern Freeway. Now that's heavy from Clarewood. It gets backed up as you go down towards the N2 highway. And Cape Town with some rain about the sort of mother city and inland areas. So you can see the impact of that on Cape Town's highways and byways. Everything on a bit of a go slow, including the M5, which is queuing from the Coburg interchange. In fact, queuing up from Coburg Road, Brooklyn side, all the way down to the Racecourse Road exit in Kenilworth. And then another hold up as you go through sort of Plumstead in towards a Grassy Park, Southfield area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
So before we talk about other sports,
Yeah.
you asked me, did I watch the? You said, what did you say?
I said, did you watch
Mr. Red Devil, or did you watch the? Did you
Red
watch?
Devils
Did
this
you
weekend?
watch? And I said, what? Are
What
you
a stupid
or something?
question.
Yeah. Is that offensive to you?
I don't find it offensive because I know that you're a Red Devils fan. And I knew that you did sit down and actually watch that game.
That is my point. To say, like, of course I watched it. Don't be stupid. Of course I watched it. Anyway, you have some friends or supporters like, Ashraf, don't hurt to me. You can't say that.
Yeah. Listen, I love them for caring. I really do.
There we are. Okay.
I really do. So be nice.
Oh, we'll be nice. But listen, we had fun. And yes, my point was, of course I watch Man United. So anybody who knows me well enough, even if I was hosting a TV show, radio show, if they were playing, especially playing as Liverpool, I'd be sort of following the game. So they can't be that stupid thinking I will not be watching it, if you get my point.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
Well,
All
the
right,
big
move on.
question is to see if they're going to play in the Champions League anyway next season. So
No, that's also I was about to say it's a stupid question because they're not going to play the Champions League now.
Just teasing.
They're useless. Yeah. Anyway, carry on.
All right, then let's get straight into what's happening in your world of sports. Starting off with swimming news. Well, Tatiana Schoenmaker is making the headlines for all the right reasons. She swam a career best time in the 50-meter breaststroke heats to set the tone on day one of the national championships in Gqeberha today. Schoenmaker clocked 30.09 seconds, showing that she's in good shape with the 200-meter to come on Wednesday and the 100-meter on Friday. Lara van Niekerk, meanwhile, was second quickest in 30.79 seconds. She will need to break 30 seconds in the evening final to show that she's back in form for the 100-meter race, her only chance of winning Olympic qualifications. And then Peter Kutsia went 24.54 seconds in the 50-meter race, and he's still a bit off his 24.36 second best, but he'll definitely won't be disappointed with this effort. In football, Orlando Pirates coach Jose Rivero has lauded the contribution of striker Tshegofatso Mabaza following his hat-trick at the weekend. Mabaza is now the joint leading goal scorer in the DStv Premiership alongside Lucas Costa of Mamelodi Sundowns, having found the back of the net 3 times in the Buccaneers' 7-1 rout of Golden Arrows. And Rivero praised the forward's overall influence since returning from his loan spell at Morocco Swallows during the first half of the season.
If now we speak about position like Chejo position, which is almost like an specialist when we speak about, even though now the role of the striker and the goalkeeper is much more bigger than before. They have to contribute and do a lot of things. And like I said few weeks ago, Chejo, like other players, like other strikers in the squad, is a player that helped the team to play better, first of all.
Well, talking about the Red Devils, Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag says that he was left disappointed with his side's 2-2 draw with Liverpool. This is despite his team conceding 28 shots in total at Old Trafford yesterday. Liverpool went into the break with a 1-0 lead through Luis Diaz's goal in the first half and saw them register 15 shots against goalkeeper Andre Onana.
First of all, it's very disappointing when you put yourself 3 times in a week in a winning position just before the end of the game. But then drop points is very disappointing. And of course, we are all seen. And there are also some poor decisions. I would say all the 3 games were poor decisions, and not every time the same player. But we have to step up. But what definitely was not helping is that we have 27 different shapes in the back line. So there are simply not the routines are there. And but still, we have to improve and we have to get this in. The sooner the better.
Then Formula One heads to China in the next 2 weeks. The last time a race was held at the Shanghai International Circuit was in 2019. Now, the Chinese Grand Prix will include the first of 6 sprint rounds this season, offering points for the drivers in Saturday's standalone 100-kilometer race, but only 1 free practice session to get used to the track. And world champion Max Verstappen has questioned the sprint race scheduled for that weekend. Ending things off with golf news, South Africa's Dean Burmester says that it's been a long road to beating the best players in the world. This is after winning for the first time on the Live Golf League. Burmester by closing with 4 under 68 and beating Sergio Garcia in a playoff yesterday when the Spaniard hit into the water on the second extra hole at Live Golf Miami. It was the 3rd time that Garcia had lost a playoff in Live Golf, and the 2nd time this year. However, on the bright side of things, Burmester backed 75 million rand.
I mean, I want to be in the field, obviously. I feel like I've played some really great golf over the last, 5-6 months. 2 wins back home in South Africa before Christmas were special. 2 tournaments I've wanted to win for a long time. And to win the South African Open, which is the 2nd oldest tournament in the world, is a privilege. And I thought I held myself really well there. And then to come here on a golf course like this, that's major worthy. And to beat major champions, I'm happy to have done that. And do I want to be in Augusta? Yeah, I've never been there before, so I want to be there.
So who's our next big champion, like serious golf champion?
Sure. Now that Tiger Woods is out, That was my favorite.
And he was our champion. I was talking about a South African, but fine.
Oh, South African. Jeez, man, that's a hard one. But it was good to see Burmester winning this one. That's a lot of money.
70 million.
And some great confidence for him. And earlier on, you were asking me why the Masters is held at the same venue. It is because Bobby Jones is the one that actually built the Augusta National, him alongside Clifford Roberts. And since they built that whole course, they were like, let's invite our friends over to come and compete on this course. And since then, they were like, why move? Just invite our friends. Yeah.
Well, now I know. There we are. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I need to play at the US Masters at Augusta. It starts this weekend, so watch out for that. Right, we'll take your voice notes. We'll take WhatsApps as well. If you have thoughts on any of the issues that I've raised, certainly welcome them as we get a sense of the fingers of the pulse of the nation. Indeed. Well, markets certainly matter. Let's get a check on the markets with Paswane Impatledle, the senior portfolio manager at Makwe Fund Managers. Good afternoon, as always, and thanks for chatting to us.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Paswane, thanks for chatting to us. Let's talk what? Local and global?
Yeah. Afternoon, Ashraf, and to all your listeners.
Thank you. All right, you can go ahead.
Okay, great. Looking into today with a lot of not a lot of company news coming out outside the fact that MultiChoice and Canal have entered into an official agreement that they will be buying MultiChoice at 125 rand per share. They've also highlighted that there's an independent board that will be reviewing the fairness of the deal that includes the likes of a Standard Bank. And Canal Plus, the parent company, is doing on the side a feasible study that whether if the deal goes successfully, they will be looking into splitting MultiChoice into separate listed entities for the market to enjoy, to pick what they like. And the stock is up 5%. But looking on the micro sense, we're looking following a week where we saw development that has pointed out to a growth outlook, Ashraf. Today, we're getting even further more news to digest around the growth outlook. We're looking at the likes of our trading partner, Germany's industrial output is further showing beating expectations, taking higher for a second month, signaling that the weak growth data is something of the past. And this has added on to the likes of China's economic development that was positive, the US, and helping prompt the commodity prices to go higher. We see the likes of copper prices hit a 40-month high. Silver was also higher. Oil managed to go higher. However, it also brings in the fear that inflation will come along with this, and that's why we're seeing rates being higher and better. And this has seen the market pricing an environment that would show that central banks are also wanting interest rates to be lower than what should be. The interest rate cuts should be lower than what is expected. But with that said, the market is looking into an environment to start the week where they're pricing for higher, for longer environment. We see the JSE was up 0.5, supported by a resource sector up 1.6. Financials were up 0.4. Industrials were lower 0.1. Europe was all green. FTSE up 0.7. DAX and CAC was up 0.6 and 7 respectively. The US was cautioned to start off their morning trade. However, right now we're seeing the Nasdaq is up 0.4. Dow and S&P up 0.2. Looking into that commodity market, it's a mixed bag. We're seeing gold is down 0.4, being very cautious ahead of that inflation print coming on later in the week at $2,320 an ounce. Platinum was up 1.3 at $955 an ounce. Oil was down 1.2 at $90 a barrel. Meanwhile, coming into the rand space, it shows some relative gains. Rand against the dollar is at 18.59, rand against the euro 20.17, and then rand against the pound 23.50, Ashraf.
Right, well, thanks for that. And I think implications, as we know, just affects everything. What happens on the outside impacts on what happens on the inside. Thanks for that. We'll chat again tomorrow, Paswane.
Cheers.
There we are. Senior portfolio manager at Makwe Fund Managers. That's Paswane Impatledle. Right, let's move on to other issues we're going to talk about. In fact, what I'll do is we're going to first get some voice notes and your opinions, because I want to certainly get a sense of what you're thinking about on a range of issues. So let's get that first. In fact, let me start with some of the voice notes.
Good afternoon, Ashran. You know the DA itself, it's here in my town in Durban. I saw the Premier of Cape Town deliver a speech. They are here to deal with the DA here in Durban, how they can rule this province, and Chris Papas is there. Then my question is, when Musi left and Mashaba left, it's because they say the white people, they left DA because it's led by the black person. Then why our black people still voting for DA? Thank you.
Afternoon, Ashraf. You see, this race card that the ANC likes to use against the DA, for me, is outdated and it won't have an impact going forward. It won't work for them. You see, now the impact of both racism in this country, in fact, the impact of corruption very soon will far outweigh the impact of racism. So they should stop it. If they assume that the DA is a racist party, then it means the ANC is a corrupt black party. Thank you.
Well, there you are. So why, people vote. You said corruption will overtake racism, and the previous one, like, why vote for them? I think people vote for parties because they see hope in a party, whichever parties they are. And whether it's the ruling party, the ANC, whether it's the EFF, whether it's the other parties, at a point of hoping, of voting, people vote for a party that gives them hope. And if they find no one that gives them hope, no party that gives them hope, they then vote for a strategic party, which really is what my suggestion is, that if you don't know who to vote for, by the way, then vote for the party of your choice as first prize. But if you're still struggling, I'm suggesting still vote. But what you do, then be strategic. That means vote for another party, and there's a strategic reason that you see why that party needs your vote for this election. But overall, what I am saying to you is, like, vote, and vote. That's what I'm saying. Okay, let's get further comments on the Zuma MK issue with Solomon in Kanyakude. In fact, yeah. Solomon, appreciate your time and thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Ashraf. You've pronounced it well, Kanyakude.
Well, I've got Lebo, my producer, helping me out. Okay, to make sure that I've got it right. Okay, so it's a teamwork story here. Right. What's your take on Zuma?
Yeah, you see, former President Zuma should be behaving like a statesman. I think the framework of the law in South Africa, regardless of his previous incarceration, may allow him as a citizen of the country. But I think as a former statesman, or rather as a former president, with that stature, he should not be going back to politics, campaigning to topple the sitting president. Instead, he should be providing wisdom. What are the lessons that he has drawn from his tenure so that he contributes towards building a successful democracy and a prosperous country? What he's doing, I think, is an accident of history.
Okay.
What the behavior that we often see in other African states. You see, former President Mugabe, he went to his grave with Zimbabwe because he wanted to cling to power even when he was no longer relevant and when he was no longer useful for the country as a president. He should have allowed some people after him to continue with his vision, but support them from behind.
Okay.
I think that's what President Zuma should be doing to President Ramaphosa.
Accepting the world doesn't work like that, and you and I both know that indeed, Solomon. Thanks for that call. Solomon making the point that he needs to be statesman-like. So the question is, do you think that former President Zuma's stance to get into parliament, right, via the MK party is statesman-like or unstatesman-like? What do you feel about his legacy if he is pushing, as he is pushing right now, to contest this election and having his image on the MK party? That's the line they want to take, right? Okay, again, as always, your comments matter. 086 000 2032, WhatsApp 0614 104 107. And 104 107 reflects the fact that we're nationwide. That's exactly what we do here on the National Pulse on SAFM.
2 years since winning the EFC middleweight title in the most dramatic and controversial fashion, Luke Michael finally defends his belt for the very first time at EFC 112 against the imposing submission machine, J.P. Kruger. And in the co-main event, featherweight champion Iga Smiley Cabeza becomes the next athlete aiming for champ status as he battles the imposing Kaleka Block Kabanda. EFC 112 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The boys of Steve Barker resist to leave the pitch without a ticket to the semis. But there's a big problem. Kevin Hunt's boys say the last dance of happiness belongs to them. This is the Nedbank Cup quarterfinal battle. Stellies versus Matsatsanza Pitori on Saturday, 13 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Someone suggested we need to take some pictures of the production team in studio and all the guys behind the scenes, including myself, and we can maybe post it so they can see what we're up to. Well, first of all, you can see me visually if you go to the live streaming for SAFM. But yeah, let me see what I can do. Take some pictures and post them on SAFM Radio and my Twitter account on the X platform. Right. Okay. Now, we spoke about John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA, and I commented about it in the feature that I called That's My Point when we started the show at 3 o'clock. And I hopefully do that every day when something really gets me thinking about certain things, okay? And I made the point that whatever he feels about his party and how the province is run, that's one issue. But the other issue is like he's suggesting other parties need to step out, basically stay out of our turf. Well, I'll tell you what, don't take my word for it. This is what he said.
Let me tell you, unlike the rest of the country, the biggest enemy of progress and opportunity here in the Western Cape is not an ANC government desperately clinging to power like they're doing in the other 8 provinces. The biggest risk to continued progress, to continued opportunity and building a better future for all of us in this province is complacency and mercenary parties like the PA, like Rise Mzansi, like Good and like the NCC. Because they're not interested in taking on the ANC. Why aren't they campaigning in Limpopo and the Northwest Province? Why are they coming to the Western Cape? Why are they coming here to try and unseat the only government that created 300,000 jobs last year? Why are they coming here to the only government that arrested through its LEAP program over 27,000 criminals in the last year? Why are they coming here to an economy that's working, with schools that work, that give opportunities for more people, with public transport systems that work? Why here? Why not they focusing their attention on the real enemy of progress in South Africa, which is the ANC? And I've thought about this, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. It's because they know that there's nothing left to loot in the other 8 provinces. Alles is opgeëet. Daar's net geld hier in die Weskaap. The rest of the country is bankrupt. That's why they want to come to the Western Cape, because they want to get their hands on the budget and the money that's been well looked after by our government here under Alan Windey and his team in the Western Cape. And let me tell you, if they get that right, it's going to be the biggest bank heist you've ever seen. And within a few months, die geld sal opwees hier in hierdie provinsie. En dit gaan nie oor dienslewering nie, oor 'n beter toekoms vir mense. Daai geld, net soos in die 8 ander provinsies, sal in die agter beursie van hierdie politiese vetkette wees. Dit sal die probleem wees.
So, my message to the parties he mentioned, are you going to listen to him? Why are you coming there? Why are you going there? Listen to him. I'm lost for words. Let's get further thoughts with Dr. Impumelelo Mkabela, who's a political analyst. Appreciate your time and thanks for joining me here on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good talking to you. Right, what do you make of John Steenhuisen's pronouncements?
Well, I really found it difficult to understand, given the fact that he is a leader of a party that is supposedly steeped in the liberal tradition. The whole idea of liberalism is to be tolerant of others and to embrace competition and to defeat your opponents in the field in an open contest that is fair and equitable. So one would expect that the leader of the DA would then be the kind of a person who espouses those values of openness, of competition, of fair game. Not somebody who would say to your opponents, I don't want to compete with you. Don't come here. You don't deserve to compete with me. So I think that message doesn't land well, given the values that the DA professes to hold. Mm-hmm. The second point to make, Ashraf, is that it is also not true what you say. It's actually false that the parties that he mentioned are not campaigning elsewhere.
Of course.
All of these parties that he mentioned are campaigning in other provinces. We see when you drive, there's posters all over. You see this the Rise and Dance leader the next day is in Limpopo, is in Mpumalanga, everywhere, all over the place. So it's not true that they are not campaigning in other provinces. Which basically, the fact that they're campaigning in other provinces, but he says they shouldn't come to the Western Cape, emphasizes the point that it's not about them campaigning in other provinces per se. It's precisely the fact that he doesn't want them to campaign in the Western Cape. And that, for me, it's a problem given the values of the DA.
Well, I mean, that's the problem that I picked up. The fact that he claims it to be the best-run province in the country, that's fine. That may well be true, okay? But to suggest that these parties must effectively stay out, I mean, as you said, why are you coming here? Why are you coming here? And that sends a message that this is not your space. It's somebody moving into a house on a new street. Like, why are you living in my neighborhood? Go and live next door. Go to another place that suits you guys. Like, don't step on our turf. I mean, is that the message that you see that he's sending out?
Well, that's not the right message, Ashraf, especially if you look again. Let's look at John Steenhuisen's position in the DA. We've spoken about the ideological disposition of his party. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is that he is the presidential candidate of the DA. In other words, he should be seeking to take over from President Ramaphosa if the DA wins the election. Mm-hmm. Now, the president or the person who aspires to be president must, of course, always sound presidential, must look presidential, must present themselves as presidential. I do not think that if you aspire to be the president of the whole country, you would stand in another corner of the country and say, in this part of the world, certain people should come here, certain people shouldn't come here. Certain political rights, including campaigning for elections, must be exercised in this corner of the world, not in another corner. So that doesn't sound presidential for me in a country as diverse as South Africa, with 9 provinces. It's a unitary state. You are the leader of the opposition. You want to be president. You must sound presidential. You must sound like the person who wants to unify the country.
And then the other point he made, which I think is really important in the 2 minutes that we have remaining, is that, he suggested that the reason these parties are not worried about the other provinces, although that's not true, as you've mentioned, is effectively there's no money in the other provinces, but there's money in our province, okay? And he suggested, therefore, that if they take over, there will be a cash heist. Now, I find that hugely problematic because none of these parties have been in power, and he's suggesting he knows their motives, and that's exactly what they're going to do.
Well, again, that's another false assumption, because if you look at the manifestos of all these parties, Ashraf, if you look at Rise and Zanzi, the Good Party, and Gates Mackenzie's party, Patriotic Alliance. In fact, in this election, all the parties, ANC, everybody, is claiming that they're going to fight corruption. And these 3 parties you mentioned have never been in power. So someone could argue that, well, the governing ANC is corrupt in some provinces. People can say that. And the ANC itself admits it's made those type of mistakes. But the parties that state hasn't singled out, which is the 3 parties, they've never been in government. So you cannot make the assumption that if they take over, they will raid the resources of the Western Cape. Yeah. But there's another element to that, Ashraf. He's making the assumption that because the DA is positioning itself as governing the Western Cape the best. The Western Cape is the best run province. And therefore, that's the best thing that has ever happened to the Western Cape. Again, it's another assumption. You don't know how another party will run the Western Cape, and it's relative. He's comparing himself with ANC-run provinces. And what if these parties can run the Western Cape better than the DA? So performing better is relative. And there's nothing wrong, Ashraf, in politics, in political campaign, if you try to score points. But you must do it in a very civil way, in a way that doesn't sound like we're intolerant of political opponents.
Well, I think that much has been... I think we all agree about it. You got in 15 seconds, just a quick one, we're on to news time, right? Will this win the DA votes, or is it likely to lose them votes?
If he's talking to the conservative constituents of the DA, they would like and enjoy this message. But if you are looking to the broader support of South Africans, more general, it's a very repelling message. It's not attractive.
Oh, that's exactly my point. Thanks for your point, Dr. Pumulelo Mkhabela. We're talking about John Steenhuisen, and if you wish to actually listen to my comments earlier on, you can get a podcast of that also from via SAFM Radio. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock, just gone 5, in fact, with Madupi.
Very much in Ashraf Garda. The top story is a Sawa judgment reserved in the MKIEC matter, and SADC soldiers are killed in the DRC. A very good afternoon. We start with election news. A judgment has been reserved in the MK party's appeal of the IEC decision to uphold the objections against former President Jacob Zuma. The Electoral Court says it'll issue an order electronically at 2 p.m. tomorrow. This ahead of the IEC's release of the final party candidate lists on Wednesday. The MK party hauled the IEC to court after it announced last month that under the Constitution, any person convicted of an offence and sentenced to more than 12 months imprisonment without the option of a fine is disqualified to stand for public office. Earlier, MK party advocate Pelisiwe May argued that there was a reasonable apprehension of bias on the IEC's part.
In this regard, my lord, it is clear that the Commission had prematurely prejudged the issue regarding the eligibility of Mr. Zuma, and it could not have arrived at a fair and different outcome. My lord, it's on this basis that we argue that firstly, Commissioner Janet Love ought to have then recused herself from deciding the objections that were entered against the appellants. Alternatively, that the Commission itself ought to have required her to recuse herself from the decision in order to ensure impartiality.
University of Joburg professor Admaya Mare says politicians are not immune from spreading misinformation. He was speaking at the multi-sectoral dialogue focusing on misinformation ahead of the upcoming elections in Sandton today. The multi-sectoral engagements aim to inform the public about the dangers of misinformation. Mare says politicians and political parties can at times dissuade the voters from casting their ballots.
And oftentimes politicians, political parties, even individuals themselves actually become conveyor belts of actually pushing out these disinformation campaigns as a way sometimes to delegitimize the whole process, to discredit the whole process, sometimes even to dissuade voters from actually going out and casting out their votes.
In other news, the alleged coordinator in the killing of rapper Keenan aka Forbes says in his bail application in the Durban Magistrates Court that the police case against him is fraught with circumstantial evidence and speculation. Mziwe Themba Gwabeni has, in a sworn affidavit, denied being part of a gang involved in contract killings. This after the investigating officer Bob Pillay said in his sworn statement in the application that they're investigating gang-related activities against the 5 accused. Gwabeni's lawyer, Advocate Paul Jorgensen, read his affidavit to the court.
Yet another example of the vagueness and smoke and mirrors that the state has brought to this investigation and this application is the following statement on the part of Pillay. There is an element of evidence suggesting offences committed under gang-related activities. The state is collecting evidence to substantiate these charges. It does not explain what an element of evidence is, which suggests offences, but simply states that the state is collecting evidence to substantiate these charges. The inference to be drawn is that this is yet another theory lacking in evidence.
Patients are stranded outside the Temba Hospital in Kabokweni near White River in Mpumalanga. The hospital remains closed for outpatients. Health workers, including doctors and nurses, withdrew their services last week over concerns for their safety. It is alleged that a group calling itself a business forum stormed the hospital and assaulted some of the workers, demanding business opportunities. Some of the patients who were turned away last week say they were hoping to get some help today. They say they are scared that they may default on their medication. And the SADC mission has lost 3 of its soldiers and 3 others have been injured in the DRC. The incident happened when a mortar round fell near the camp where they were staying. Soldiers who died and sustained injuries are from Tanzania. The SADC mission is currently deployed in the eastern DRC to bring peace and stability there. Kayolihle Kumalo takes a look.
The SADC mission in the DRC has also confirmed that a South African soldier died while receiving treatment due to health challenges in a hospital in Goma. The soldiers from South Africa, Tanzania and Malawi are part of the regional response to address the unstable and deteriorating security situation in eastern DRC. The troops are there as per the principle of collective self-defense and collective action outlined in the SADC Mutual Defense Pact. Regional Bloc SADC has also sent condolences to South Africa, Tanzania, as well as families of the soldiers who died. Kayolihle Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The top story this hour: judgment has been reserved in the MK Party's appeal of the IEC's decision to uphold the objections against former President Jacob Zuma. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
Coming up in your sports, Mokoena plays down favourites tag for Champions League title. Kolisi dealt yet another injury blow, and Schoenmaker off to a speedy start at the national champs. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
And your top traffic story, still very heavy on the R21. This is for motorists there having left Pretoria on your way towards the airport at OR Tambo International. It's the roadworks still there at Olifantsfontein Road. So coming into that Clayville area, it remains heavily backed up. We are just getting reports of a cash-in-transit heist incident, R56, south of Pietermaritzburg in the Richmond area. It's only just sort of breaking, unfolding news, so we'll keep an eye on that. If you're travelling your Koppel through to Pietermaritzburg around Richmond, just watch for and expect some delays. Issues at the top of Fields Hill, the M13, very heavy today out of Pinetown all the way up through towards sort of Pioneer Road territory. The N3 out of Durban's heavy today, a lot heavier than you might be expecting. Tollgate Bridge area right through to Spaghetti Junction, that's all backed up. And Cape Town, a crash on the side of the N2 outbound near Jan Smuts Drive is the reason the traffic is so heavy leaving town via Hospital Bend. Traffic backing from Searle Street all the way through basically to about Bunga Avenue. More queues on the N2 as you line up passing the airport towards the R300 at Khayelitsha. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Indeed, this is the National Pulse, and it's a show that daily must reflect the National Pulse. So we deal with the issues that impact on you. We deal with the issues of the big players in the country and how that impacts the national psyche, and that's what we do. So always welcome your thoughts, your feedback, and your connections on air. And you can call in. You know that whenever you want to raise an issue that you want to get off your chest, to do that, you can call in to 086 000 2032. WhatsApp, text or voice notes 0614 104 107. By the way, I don't want to forget, there was a fascinating moderated conversation that was done on Stephen Whitter's show this morning from 8:30 to 9 on the influence of NGOs and other countries on the politics of other countries, like, for example, South Africa. If you can get the podcast of that, listen to that. I found it really, really fascinating. Okay, let's move on to other issues. What's fascinating as well is a broadband survey to look at, of all the different mobile companies, which one has got the best connectivity. And they've got the answers, and we'll talk about that in about 10 minutes' time. And I wonder what you think. Which one of the mobile operators has got is the best connectivity in the country? Maybe you'll get a surprise. We'll see. Tell you what, let's get an update on the developments that took place this morning regarding the inquest into the deaths of the 21 teenagers at the Enyombeni Tavern. Remember that horrific story, right? Now, the inquest should have started today at the Imnansani Regional Court, but I gather that did not quite happen. What is the story really? Our reporter Lubabalo Dada is with us. Thank you for your time and thanks for joining me.
Good evening to you and to the viewers, to listeners.
Okay, so the inquest did not take place. Why?
Well, the reason why the inquest did not take place was because the lawyer was representing Siakangela Ndevu and his wife, Vuyokazi, said that she needed time to consult with her clients because she has not been in contact with them since February, after the ruling when these two were found responsible for the sale of alcohol to minors in February. So she said she wanted to iron out some outstanding issues because she was not sure if they still want her to represent them in this case or not. So that was the reason why the didn't happen today, the inquest.
And on that basis, the postponement was granted, yeah?
Yes, it was granted to the 10th of May. So what is going to happen now, the state is going to issue subpoena to the couple to come to court on that day. And then the lawyer then will speak to them, and then they will chat a way forward as to whether they still want her to be there, to represent her rather.
Was the issue raised to the lawyer to say why was she not in contact with, let's say, her clients since February? I mean, like no contact in almost like 2 months? Rather surprising.
Yeah, she says that she's been trying to contact them, but she couldn't get hold of them. Even the state did say that they sent someone at their house, but they only found a child and who does not know where they are. So I really don't know how that happened because I would imagine that she had the contacts of both Siakangela and his wife.
Anything else that came out of today's, postponement?
Well, nothing happened really because that was the first issue that was raised when we were expecting to see witnesses taking place. I understand that the liquor board was there as well. They were part of the people that would be testifying, as well as the captain who was investigating the case, Captain Swart, was also present, and also some of the employees who used to work at Enyombeni Tavern were also there. It was only Siakangela and his wife who were not present.
But they were obviously key witnesses, right, in that case?
Yes.
And therefore the postponement. Just to wrap up, just to recap then, in terms of what actually happened, if you can recollect in terms of the deaths of those 21 teenagers, just a very brief recap of that?
Well, the incident happened in 2022, in June, on the 26th. That was after the exams were finished, so there was celebrations of pens down. So it's alleged that a group of young people went to Enyombeni Tavern to celebrate there, and then there was a stampede which led to suffocation. Some allege that there was a pepper spray that was used in that venue. As a result, some people, in fact, young people that were there died on that day.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it. So you're saying, to confirm, postponed to sometime in May, right?
On the 10th of May.
10th of May, and let's hope then progress will be made. A really sad issue in the South African landscape of 21 teenagers losing their lives, and really horrific story indeed. Well, thank you for your time there, Lubabalo Dada, covering that story that was then postponed to that period. Right, there's voice notes on a variety of issues. Let's pick up on that.
Hi, Ashraf. Sposwayo here in Western Cape. Look, Ashraf, I think this is just a rhetoric statement from the side of the DA. Really, they are off the double standard, because if what they are saying has anything to hold, why are they contesting outside the Western Cape? If there is nothing for the other party to contest for in the Western Cape, why are they scratching their arms outside the Western Cape to go and contest in the other provinces? This is just a double standard. Please, this is a democratic country, DA people. Let all the other parties contest, and then we can see who's going to win the Western Cape.
Well, I think point well made there. And I mean, let's get also perspective, So the DA pronounces this time round, it's not like the other parties, be it the ANC or the EFF or even Gayton McKenzie's party and others have not made comments in recent weeks or times where sometimes the comments are outrageous. The fact is, whatever the reasons are, they do it. They think it may convince people to support them. But in all cases, they're wrong. And I'll tell you what, when they do it, we must also call them out on that. So today it would be the DA, in our opinion, in my opinion. You may differ, for example, listening in. But it doesn't mean we must stop there. If others do the same and they're outrageous and they make comments that are actually against the democratic tradition of a democratic South Africa, then we must call it out. Here's another.
This is Derek from Umhlanga. Hello, Ashraf. I am a full-time karate instructor. Best job in the world.
Chop, chop. Okay, got that. Thanks for that, Derek, the karate instructor. Right, there's another. We've got a call, in fact, from JCK. I think it is from Musina. Hi, JCK.
Hi, Ashraf. Are you what?
I'm very good indeed. I'm inspired. I'm thrilled. I have a position where I can talk to you and get a great sense of the pulse of the nation. Why wouldn't I be?
Yeah, welcome to the world of radio, SAFM talk show.
Much appreciated. Thanks, JCK. What do you want to get off your chest?
I've got two issues here quickly. One is that for Department of Labor and Employment, and the other one is about the filthy, the dirtiness around South Africa.
Okay.
So let me begin with this one here. Department of Labor and Employment. Ashraf, I'm so flabbergasted and simultaneously irritated by the Labor Department Minister Kilosun Lesi when he wants 23 billion to create jobs. Today, why is he thinking of creating jobs today? What has he been doing for these past 30 years? That is their department, to create jobs. So they were failing, they were sleeping on duty. And I'm surprised. They want 23 billion to do what? Remember, we've got that hanging issue here. Is it 5 billion here UIF during COVID? No one has accounted it for. And that Department of Labor, maybe if you Ashraf me, you can highlight me. Did it ever employ anyone, that department? Do you know of?
Did they ever employ anybody? I mean, they clearly have employed people. Yeah.
Did they ever employ anybody? I don't think so. And remember, that department is the worst department in this new dawn of democracy. Look, the government today doesn't have money because of that department.
Why do you say that? Why do you say it's the worst department?
It's the worst department. They're always on slipper note. Let me tell you now. We have got about millions and millions of people who are working and are not registered. If you are working and you are registered, you generate revenue to the government in form of pay, UIF, etc. But people are working, are not. That department is failing to generate revenue for the government. So it's just a useless government. It's just a useless department. It's time the Tulas Nation wakes up and do the right thing. They must visit all the shops, all the farms, all the workplace. They must do that job.
Okay, I think you've made the point and you've articulated it well and clearly showing your disgruntlement in this case to the Department of Labour and by extension government. Fine. Now, the other issue you wanted to raise very quickly is what?
Yeah, the other issue, the standard of South Africa has dropped dramatically today. We don't have city, we don't have town, we don't have kasi, we don't have whatever you can name it. All this is due to uncaring and arrogance of the ruling party. Let's look now how dirty Joburg is. Huh? Can you attract investors by that? Look, they've got cuckoos on top of the what you call, of the flags.
Okay.
It does it?
Right. Okay, let's leave it at that.
For now.
JCK, thanks. And to answer the question about Joburg being filthy, absolutely. I live in the city. It's a disgrace. I mean, there's just no nice way to say it. Sorry. It's a disgrace. How you can let a city dubbed a world-class African city, I'm talking of downtown Joburg, okay? And for those who are concerned about what I may think about the DA, Cape Town's very clean, the city. I can tell that to you now. Absolutely spotless. But Joburg City is a dump. And somebody has to take accountability for that. But the question is, who? Can you call the city of Joburg? Or do you go to national government when the election comes up, as it does come up pretty soon? Further thoughts? Let's see. There's another call. There may be another voice note. There's a couple more. Why are you so biased against the DA? Oh, really? Actually, I've just said now, Joburg City is a dump. And you tell me who's run it for the majority of the period that it's been like that. For example, let's be consistent about what we see that's just wrong, okay? Here's another one. John's speech sounds like a gangster fighting for territory. And another saying, John is a representation of all white races living in the Western Cape. I'm not sure if you can say all white races because, I mean, there's a lot of comment around it that just says so much that puts everybody with the same brush, saying they all think Western Cape should not be part of South Africa. They exclude all non-white players out of every sector and industry in the province. I'm not going to continue. It's a bit long, but I think you get the point there. Another one, Mr. Zuma is old. He's supposed to enjoy his retirement, not go up and down with the courts. This will let him down. Will it? Okay, let's do this. We're going to talk about a fascinating survey put together by My Broadband and their thoughts on which of the mobile operators has the best connectivity. I wonder what you think it is. And you've probably got your own list. Maybe what you do before we talk about it, write down your top 3 in order, which you think has got the best connectivity. And then we get an answer right after this.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.6 FM in Tshwane. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, so My Broadband has put together some insights for the best mobile network in South Africa in 2024. Marius Hollenbach has got more on that one. I had my own thoughts about which one has got the best connectivity, but let's hear it from Marius. Marius, good chatting to you, and thanks for, in this case, you're putting your fingers on the pulse of connectivity.
Hi, Ashraf.
Good talking to you, yeah. Right, go ahead.
So My Broadband did some research on the network performance of mobile operators. And to do this, we have an app that people can download to test their network performance with a speed test. And we also have dedicated network testing vehicles that drive around the country doing network tests as they go along. So we measure the latency, the download speed, and the upload speed of cellular networks. We take thousands of measurements across the country of all the network operators, and then we calculate a network score for them. So in the first quarter for 2024, MTN came up as the winner in the ranking, with Vodacom closely behind them, and then finishing up with Cell C, Telkom, and Rain. So MTN had overall the best network. Vodacom did have the fastest 5G speeds in our tests, but as an overall network experience, MTN was the clear winner.
Okay, and so when you say clear winner, what did you actually determine here? I mean, I know you mentioned speeds, but I mean, just tell us more about it.
So the three main metrics that we measure is the latency, download speed, and upload speed. Simply put, latency is the delay between your phone sending data and the network responding. So, for example, when you tap a video link, the latency is the brief pause between when you tap the link and when the video actually starts playing. The download speed determines how fast the video is sent to your phone. So that determines what quality the video will play at. And the upload speed is, for example, when you send a video file to a friend on WhatsApp, how long that file takes to send up into the network. So we take those three metrics, we measure the performance of them on each network operator, and then use a formula to calculate the overall network score for each operator, weighing up those three metrics based on their importance for everyday users.
So therefore, that gap between, let's take the big two players in the country, right, MTN and Vodacom, the fact that MTN, according to your analysis now, basically wins narrowly. So how significant is that in terms of, playing on my mind and, in terms of its push in the marketplace?
So MTN and Vodacom have, for the last couple of years, been fighting for the top spot. And luckily for consumers, it's been a very close race, because this means that the more they try to beat each other, the better experience the customers on those networks have. It's not a massive gap between them, but historically it has never been. These two operators have always been very close in their performance, and it usually comes down to just a few points this side or that side. But MTN has, over the past couple of years, been more consistently the top network over the recent results.
I've been looking at, the down speeds. You got 66.82 Mbps. What does that stand for?
So that's megabit per second, and that's basically just a measure of speed for data transfers. So if you're going to be sending a 4 megabyte file over WhatsApp, let's, for example, say a photo, that is just a measurement of how quickly that file is downloaded to your phone.
Now, why are the uploads then significantly slower? It says 15.42, yeah.
So the operators do optimize their networks for download speeds, because that is what most users use for their general internet browsing and general phone usage. When you are browsing a website, you take up a lot more download. You use a lot more download bandwidth than you do upload. Your upload would only consist of you requesting for the website, and all the videos, all the files and images and text from the website will then count as download. So it makes sense for operators to put a bigger emphasis on the download speed than the upload speed.
And you also made the point that, as MTN and Vodacom, the two companies that they dominate market share in the country, as they vie for number one, they try and improve their service delivery to all of us, in this case the speeds, right? So is the trend faster?
It is. Over the lockdown period, we saw some changes with a lot more people being dependent on their mobile connections. And then obviously as load shedding became a worse problem, then the network operators started suffering, because when there's no power, there's nothing to power the cellular towers. So networks have to spend a tremendous amount of money just to set up batteries and backup systems to make sure that when the power goes down, that people are still connected. So they still do improve their networks on a continual basis, but they spend a tremendous amount on just making sure the network stays up. They also face a big problem of vandalism and theft. So they're fighting on many different fronts just to ensure they give the customers the best experience.
I've also noted that when it comes to 5G availability, then Vodacom appears to be better, trumps out MTN. Now let's get to the worst. You've got the rain as the worst, right? And it's called the worst. How bad, and what's happened there?
So rain is a difficult one. They don't deliver the same type of services that most of the other network operators do. They've got very limited packages, and they market their services to a very specific market with very specific objectives. So for their approach, the download speed and upload speeds across the complete network might not be as important to them as it is to the other operators. For example, on some of their packages, they have capped speed. So you buy a package, but the speed is limited up to a certain point for certain data usage. So by that approach, you do limit the potential maximum measurement that we will get when we test the network.
Well, it's all fascinating. Feel free to tweet it out to us on the X platform, tagging SAFM Radio and myself in terms of some of your findings. We certainly will share the podcast as well. So thank you for your time. Most interesting. The big question to all of them, I would think, as we say goodbye to Marius Hollenbach, is like, what do the operators then do with this data in terms of convincing us with their sales pitch? Because sometimes I think when I go and try and buy a mobile phone, many of the salespeople don't know enough about that. For me, that is a big, big selling point. I mean, here's a question to you. What's the biggest selling point for you, besides price, when you actually go and buy a mobile phone? What's it? What convinces you to buy X? And no, let me not use the word X because you may think it's like old Twitter. A versus B. You tell me. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 5:30. Here's Mudupi.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. In your headlines, Asawa, the DA says it has written to the Powers and Privileges Committee requesting feedback on its request to investigate the former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula relating to a 70% salary increase given to the Secretary to Parliament. Judgment has been reserved in the MK Party's appeal of the IEC's decision to uphold the objections against former President Jacob Zuma. And former President Thabo Mbeki says Africa must ensure that the 1994 Rwanda genocide does not happen again anywhere on the continent. A full news update at 6.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A lot of rain across the country this afternoon. There's a major band of it from sort of Klerksdorp going south, bending in through sort of Bethlehem and down through the Pietermaritzburg, Durban, down through Port Shepstone on the south coast as well. So a lot of it around. Drive carefully if it's wet where you are. It looks particularly heavy around sort of Bethlehem, Harrismith type area. So a warning really for travel over Van Riemen's Pass as well. That's likely to be wet and quite dangerous at high speeds. Also a lot of rain still hugging the southern coast from Cape Town through to sort of George area, particularly down around the Overstrand area. Schools in that Overstrand area and part of the Cape Winelands are suspended and closed again tomorrow. So still some real concerns about the weather today and what's still to come overnight and tomorrow as well. On the roads this afternoon, the R21 approaching Clayville on the way to the airport stays heavy. A crash on Allendale Road leaving Midrand across to Tembisa. That collision just before you get into the Klipfontein View area, so that's quite bad. Broken down vehicle on Joburg's N3 south at Giluli, so traffic remains under pressure from as far back as Limbro Park. Durban side today, the run up towards Kloof being held. Fields Hill very busy from Richmond Road all the way through to Pioneer. There's a crash near Dunkeld Road on the M19 heading out towards New Germany and the Claremont area. And Cape Town, the crash on the N2 out of town at Pinelands out by Janslots Drive is being cleared. Plus left a backlog of traffic leaving the city centre halfway out sort of Searle Street on Nelson Mandela Boulevard all the way through to Mowbray Main Road. And the N7 south is very slow today from Frans Conradi, moving slow through Goodwood towards Fort Trekker Road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Khapele.
Well, it's overcast in many parts of the country, but the what's it? The sky is the limit as far as Sundowns goes. What's your top story?
Absolutely.
To me? Yeah.
Talking about the sky's the limit, well, Mamelodi Sundowns head coach Rulani Mokoena says that they are not favourites to win the CAF Champions League. The Brazilian's mentor pointed out to their record in the Continental Tournament to support his point, given the PSL outfit has only once clinched the competition in 2016 when compared to other semi-finalists Al Ahly, Esperance and TP Mazembe. Sundowns reached the last four after beating Young Africans on penalties and will now face Esperance, and Mokoena doesn't expect it to be a walk in the park.
It's tough. It's, of course, the competition, I said to you, starts in the knockouts. These games are very, very difficult. Two seasons in a row now in the semi-finals. It's important. And let's see, we've been knocked out a couple of times in the quarterfinals, so let's cherish this moment. And even in games where we thought we would come through, we've been pulled back a couple of times in the history of this club.
In fact, talking about Sundowns, I went to, I was in Cairo in November. Yeah. I was moderating some intra-Africa trade conference. So, of course, people know you from South Africa. So from the time I get off the plane, the guy says, like, "You're from South Africa?" I said, "Yeah." He said, Mamelodi Sundowns, right?
Of course.
I'm like, "No, man, Chiefs and Pirates." Like, Sundowns. And then he says, Patrice Motsepe. They knew it all. Then I get later on to the hotel. And again, "You're from South Africa?" And he says, a different guy, Sundowns. And he says, yellow. Like, and then I told the people in South Africa, like, "I'm sorry, guys, Chiefs and Pirates, gone." And this goes back to the political conversation we had about John Steenhuisen. No club has the right to demand to be first all the time and therefore national or global prominence. There was a period you couldn't stop thinking about Kaizer Chiefs, continentally, and then Orlando Pirates. Now, Mamelodi Sundowns, because they're winning everything. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. Well, still staying with football, Everton have confirmed that they have begun the process to appeal the decision to be deducted 2 points for a second breach of the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. It is the second time the Toffees have been deducted points this season after initially being punished with a 10-point deduction that was reduced to 6 on appeal for a previous breach of regulations. Now, the latest punishment sees them drop to 16th in the table on 27 points. In rugby, Springbok captain Siya Kolisi has been dealt another injury blow, leaving the field after just 22 minutes in his comeback match for Racing 92. He appeared to have hurt his right ankle yesterday. Now, this latest setback comes after a month-long absence due to a broken finger, and it raises concerns for both Kolisi and the Springboks. Talking about the Springboks, they face a challenging schedule in the coming months. They will play against the Wales at Twickenham in late June, followed by 2 test series against Ireland and Portugal and South Africa. The team will then focus on the Rugby Championship, featuring matches against Argentina, Australia and New Zealand. And as Siya Kolisi's injury status remains uncertain, the Springboks must now rely on their depth of talent and adaptability to navigate these upcoming fixtures successfully. Then ending things off with cricket news, the Chennai Super Kings won the toss. They elected to bowl first up against Kolkata Knight Riders, as CSK have won 9 out of their last 13 matches at home. The home side has had a rough period on the road, losing both their recent away matches, and they will definitely be keen for a change in fortunes after 2 losses on the road. And just keeping you up to date with the results on the go, the Kolkata Knight Riders are now sitting on 127 for 7 after 18 overs. Well, that's it. It's a wrap from my side for SAFM Sport. Ke nna Tumeng Kgapela, Modimo.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.1 FM in Johannesburg.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And I can tell you now, tomorrow to me we'll talk about Banyana against Nigeria. I know that. Let's talk about money now, the MoneyWeb market update with Jami Moyaha. Hi, Jami.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to me, and good afternoon to the listeners. Today's show is going to be largely looking at some developments out of our state-owned entities. We found out 2 major things: that the Kusile power station is set to take 3 of its units offline in between now and April of 2025. I'm going to speak to an independent energy analyst around that to try and make sense of what's happening there and what the impact will be to us as South Africans. And then I've got a conversation with an independent developmental economist on the latest developments from Transnet. There has been a challenge to the independent or the private application that was awarded to the ICTSI to operate Durban's container port Pier 2, which is the largest port that sits in the largest pier that sits in the Durban container ports side of it. So there's been been contestation around the Philippines company that was appointed to run that port, and that contestation came from another bidder in the form of a Danish company named AP Moller Maersk. So I'm going to dig into that and try and unpack what is being contested, why it's being contested, and what these delays will mean for the private operation of our ports. And then we've got a conversation in our personal finance segment around the powers of attorney. More often than not, we grant powers of attorney to various individuals in our lives for various reasons. We're going to unpack that and unpack what you need to know about granting a power of attorney, about removing power of attorney, and what it means when somebody has power of attorney on your behalf. But before we get into all of those and other stories, the markets have had a good day in terms of local markets, and Henko Kreer has been keeping an eye on those markets for us throughout the day. He joins me now to do a quick summary of the markets and see what's been moving. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks so much, as always, for keeping an eye on the markets. Gold still pushing beyond $2,300 an ounce there, but the rand also showing some signs of life, strengthening against all the major currencies.
Yes, Jimmy. Hello to you and to Ashraf and to me, and good evening to all the listeners. Yeah, and I would say it's a fairly green day on the markets worldwide, because in the US, the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 is trading about 0.2% stronger, and the Nasdaq at this stage 0.5% up. And then European stocks, the FTSE 100 closed 0.4% stronger, and the DAX and the CAC 40 each gained 0.8% today. And then the JSE also finished 0.8% stronger today at a level of 75,335 points. The industrial index was the one that pulled back a little bit. It lost 0.3% today. But then that resources index coming back strong again today, like the case was these last couple of weeks. That resources index gained another 2.4% today, and the financial index finished 0.7% stronger. BHP had a good day, 2.3% up, and then Anglo and First Rand each finished 1.3% stronger, and Glencore and Process 1% up at the end of the day. Other companies that had a great Monday were Sasol, Sibanye, Stillwater and Northam. Sasol finished 6.2% stronger. Sibanye, Stillwater and Northam each gained 5.5%. There's also Implats as well as the MultiChoice Group. They each gained 5% today. And Pick n Pay, Sun International and Amplats each finished 3% up. On the negative side of things, the MTN Group lost 3%, and Bidcorp and Mr. Price each lost 2%. WBHO and Pepkor Holdings finished 1.5% weaker. On the commodities market, the price of gold, $2,328 an ounce. Silver is trading at $27.60. Platinum, $957. And palladium, $1,050 an ounce. The price of Brent crude coming down slightly, now sitting at $90.30 a barrel. And if we have a look at the rand, you'll pay 18 Rand 63 for a US dollar, 23 Rand 57 for a pound, 20 Rand and 22 cents for a euro, and 12 Rand 30 for an Australian dollar. Bitcoin is enjoying another great day, now trading at $72,000, and that is more or less 1.4 million Rand. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much for that update, Henko. There's lots to dig into. I'm particularly excited to look at the likes of Sasol, who had a SENS announcement today. Implats finally back above 90 Rand a share, and Pick n Pay back above 20 Rand. But we'll dig into these and other stories just after 6 when we return. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Thanks, Jimmy. I tell you what, picking up on what you said about power of attorney. So here for me is the ultimate power of attorney. It is the general election where you effectively cede your power to a political party, and you do that once every 5 years, and you have the choice to take it away from them or extend for another 5 years. I hope you got that power of attorney. Of course, there's another legal power of attorney that means something completely different. Right, we're going to pick out some callers, many people having thoughts on a range of issues. So tell me what it is. I mean, tell me about the power of attorney as you understand it in the political sense, but the power of attorney as you understand it, as Jimmy explained as well. That's also fine. The return of Zuma, where does that fit in for you? Again, the DA John Steenhuisen comments. Again, some people are saying actually he's fine to say that. Or he never said don't contest, right? So you want to pick up on that? That's also fine. What about Rwanda? Any comments on Rwanda's genocide? 30 year commemoration and what's come out of that. And as you've heard from Sophie McGuena, the lessons to learn, certainly for South Africa, as always, but also in terms of what's happened in particular in that contestation of land between Israel and the Palestinians, and how 30,000 plus people have died by a series of othering and the lessons that we can learn from all of that. So if you wish to add to this conversation, I certainly welcome it. You can WhatsApp or call in. Call in is probably first prize, 086 000 2032. And WhatsApp, you have voice notes, or you can text me, 0614 104 107. And then that's WhatsApp or voice notes, either way that you can do that. In fact, talking about WhatsApp, there's Salim saying, Ashraf, you're doing a great job with the National Pulse, well presented, good communication, excellent interaction with the listeners, enjoying the show. Well, I'm thrilled that you're doing just that. Listen, it's never easy getting into replacing another host. We have different styles, different mannerisms, different ways of doing things. But overall, the bottom line to all of this, we must deliver to you. And I'm certainly very keen 100% on doing just that, not just today, but every single day.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Professor John Patricios, the Director of Waterfall Sports Orthopedic Surgery. What concussion is all about? What effect does it have on the brain, on the mind? And why can't players play on if they do get a knock on the head immediately? Why do they need to be assessed?
There's no visible wound for concussion. So to understand what's going on requires some intuition in terms of the changes that happen in a player's brain. So concussion is a traumatic brain injury. It's an injury to the nerves in the brain, but not so much a visible structural injury. So, for instance, a bleed or anything that we can see, but more of an injury to the way the brain functions.
Top Sport on SAFM. Call us on 086 000 2032.
Yes, certainly your calls are welcome. Let's get to, however, some voice notes, and there are many that I need to go through, so here's another.
Good afternoon, Asha, and your team, Jumbo Africa. You see, now we're just waiting for judgment. We are quiet. We want to see the judgment will defend the MK, because of MK, to be honest with you, is a big threat to ANC. ANC is scared of MK. It is for the first time I see opposition party shake ANC. MK is a big threat. ANC, they can't breathe. MK is there. And what I like about MK, they don't have even manifesto. The people, they just work from ANC to join MK. So ANC, they are also worried so that judgment can fend them so that they can be free. But MK is a big threat. Is Anonymous Pacey in Matosang.
Hey, Anonymous, the way you laughed about, say, I'm trying to do your way of laughing. Like, what did you say? ANC is very scared of MK. ANC is very scared of MK. Well, there you are. I'll tell you what, on a serious note, okay? And you also made the point, no manifesto, nothing, but they certainly have got support, okay? And here's the point. I mentioned the other day that an Uber driver told me, well, MK will win, will do incredibly well. But let's say MK gets 10%. Then for that to happen, the bulk of its support would have to come from ANC supporters. So at this point in time, there's a sense from people and trends that suggest the ANC will drop below 50% to maybe, 45 at worst, okay? Or maybe 40% if it's really a disastrous election for them. But if MK takes 10%, then that 40% is a reality based upon what was just said. Then it changes the scenario completely, because then it gets into coalitions. And the big question to the two major parties, the ANC and the DA, assuming the DA gets 22 whatever percent, maybe even less, you never know, but let's say they get 20 odd, then who will the ANC partner to get into power in a coalition, and who will the DA do so? And where does the EFF fit into all of this? It's a fascinating story being played out. Well, here's another voice note.
This is Tepiso. Politics aside, I was in Cape Town last week after such a long time. Do you know when you walk in the city or you walk downtown, you feel safe? But I don't think you will feel the same way when you walk especially in District Street in North in Johannesburg, is dirty, and who's the governing party in that city? Let's just, be fair and be realistic, whether it's the DA or ANC. If a political party is doing a good job, they should be commended for that. Cape Town, for me, is the cleanest city and it's safe rather than Johannesburg.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. So I've been to Cape Town twice in the last few months, and I'll concede that I think, Cape Town's issue is the city is top class, top notch. On the other hand, Cape Town can't claim complete credit for everything when the Cape Flats still resembles the Cape Flats of the 1980s. That's true. And there are areas of no-go areas which Cape Town has not resolved. That's true. On the other hand, to go back to the city of Joburg, yes, it's a mess. And Johannesburg has been run in the main by the ANC. The DA has also run it, and there's also been coalitions, as we know now. Okay, but the majority party for the longest period of democratic South Africa has been the ANC. And no matter which way the ANC want to spin it, how can they convince me that they're doing a good job overall in 30 years in the city of Joburg? When you look at a city like that, the richest city on the African continent economically, right, and it is run down the way it is, it's a huge problem.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Nkonzo here in Durban. Well, with regards to Steenhuisen, his utterances worries me. It gives me a sense that if they were to govern the country, there are some parts of the areas that some people will not be allowed to go to. So it's very worrisome.
Well, it is worrisome. And maybe that's the point that you've drawn from that to say it's worrisome. So now the question is, how then do you interpret that? Right. Further comments, further thoughts? Anybody wants to push a point on air live? I certainly welcome that. You can do that. You can call in right away. And that is to 086 000 2032 for a live conversation as we get a sense of the national pulse. Well, I mean, here's the question. When I say to you, we reflect the national pulse, then what's your opinion of the national pulse right now? That means, what are you feeling? Okay, do you feel that the pulse is at a level that is managed, or do you feel the pulse rate is far too high, which suggests there's huge problems, or it's far too low? What's your sense, and what are the areas of the country that are like just chilled and absolutely normal that you feel that's all fine? There's a couple of more voice notes. Let's see. Everybody was the same.
Speaking of cities, I recently went to Pretoria. I did some time in Pretoria in the early 2000s, 2001, 2002, somewhere around there. Beggars Park was one of the most beautiful places in Pretoria. Recently I went there. That place is a dump. Like, it is not even a shadow of what it used to be in the early 2000s. So maybe DA is doing good in the Western Cape or in the cities where, let me say, in the affluent cities, because I hear people from the townships in the Western Cape are complaining also. But in Pretoria, they are utterly failing. Let me just say that. Thank you.
Well, I think that's the point I made earlier on, that I think Cape Town city, top-class tourism areas, absolutely world-class. It's an incredible city. But the Cape Flats part of Cape Town, you tell me. If you are living there in the Cape Flats, you tell me. And those many areas that are impoverished, that have been gang-infested, that has not been changed in years. Well, I mean, if the DA wants to take credit for the great things they've done, and let them take credit for that, because we want a democracy that's thriving, then they must also concede where they've got it wrong. And the same with the ANC. For now, as they want my power of attorney, they want me to give them a mandate for my vote, for example, then they must convince me that after 30 years, what they're doing in the country convinces me that I should still give them another 5 years. And then the same for the other political parties who are vying to get into positions, including the EFF and the others. Convince us that we should support you, but convince us not just with the words, with a practical demonstration of this is what you're going to do. I believe, by the way, that people trying to call in, there's some technical problem with the call-ins for now. So maybe just hold the calls until we reboot the system, but you can certainly voice note us right away on a whole range of issues that you may want to pick up on. By the way, what do you make of Paul Kagame? Do you have any thoughts on his leadership? You know, he's certainly run an impressive country, but he certainly also doesn't hold much support for opposition, just so that you know that, okay? So just to tell you that. But by the way, he said something today that I thought is worth repeating. He said, I don't need, and he tweeted this out, okay? I don't need anyone to like me or to hate me to live my life. I have my views, I express them. I owe my living to not a single individual or country, even powerful ones. We are all human. I can tell you it's not possible for somebody to have power over me. President Paul Kagame now. That's interesting because of the fact that he runs an impressive country that certainly does not allow much opposition. I've been there, very impressive country. But you cannot say what I'm saying right now in those places to say, you know what, the government's a mess, I don't like them. Or a government's a mess, I hate them. You can't say that there. You cannot say that. But you can say that in democratic South Africa. And that is a credit to our country, and we need to say that. Magdalene, hi, welcome to the show.
Afternoon, Ashraf.
Yeah, good talking to you.
Ashraf,
Yes.
Yes, I'm on your point, saying that they need to convince us in order to can be in their favor, because the only thing that I know is that they want to maintain their positions and get their payments. That's it. But they don't want to implement the Freedom Charter. That's the problem. And that Freedom Charter is the only one which convinced us to can vote for ANC. So for the fact that they failed for the past 30 years, we are not their children. We are not toddlers whom we are going to give a stock switch and say, I'm coming, Papa is coming to do what and what and what. No, we are not toddlers. Number two, ANC is going to be worried about MK because Jacob Zuma has got the full knowledge about their corrupt skills. So they are worried that with his full knowledge and experience, he's going to do the same. And he's going to cut them off.
So how well do you think MK is going to do then in this election?
Number one, Jacob Zuma and all those who went to MK, they want to excel in their corrupt activities and techniques.
Oh, good. Have you made up your mind? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but have you made up your mind where you're going to go?
I'm going to say to you, I'm going to vote full time. You know what, Ne? The only thing that will make me to vote full time is that a fly can kill an elephant. That's what I'm going to say to you. You must be careful of the smaller parties because they act. They don't just speak, they act. So a fly can kill an elephant. Forum for service delivery is coming up. I'm saying that because it has got a lot of history within the communities.
A fly can kill an elephant. I will not forget that, Magdalene. You have reminded me. A fly can kill an elephant. Thank you for that. Much appreciate your call. Okay, that's Magdalene from Mangaung. Any further calls? Maybe time for one more call. Otherwise, there's a WhatsApp. There's a couple of voice notes we can play. Let's see if we do that right away.
Ashraf, you know what? These new parties like Rise Mzansis, they must put their effort to go and contest in the provinces like Eastern Cape and get rid of the ANC there. Because ANC took Eastern Cape to dogs and leave Western Cape to the DA. Because Western Cape is run better, much better. Yes, it can't be 100%, but it's much better than the provinces like Eastern Cape. Much, much better. Much better. They must put the effort, go and get rid of ANC there and fix that Eastern Cape and leave the DA here. And they can even help DA to improve where they lack here in Western Cape, but Western Cape is run better. Thank you.
Well, I mean, it is run better, yeah, but doesn't mean they must leave them alone. And I think Rising Mzansi are contesting the Eastern Cape, and they're contesting everywhere else as well. I really think, let them do what they want. Let all the parties do what they want. And let you and I decide who's going to get their vote. I'll tell you who's going to get my vote. The party that most convinces me that their vision is most aligned to my vision, I want to get South Africa to become a champion nation. Who's going to get me there? That's the one thing. And then I want to see the leadership of the party, the top 20, just how much credibility they've got. And the last thing, I want to see if the party that I vote for doesn't get the 50+1, what's their coalition plan? I think it's an important question we all need to ask, because it's very likely that we're going to get into coalition. Let's end the show with a parting shot, and this is important, okay? Judy Bloom said, each of us must confront our own fears, must come face to face with them. How we handle our fears will determine where we go with the rest of our lives. So perhaps a good thing for you and I to think about, what are you scared of? What gives you the crux? What are the fears you have? And then how do you handle your fears? By the way, tomorrow we have an outside broadcast at, Freedom Park in Pretoria. So I'll be there. I've never been there before. I've seen pictures. I've seen everything else. But guess what? I'll be moving places. Freedom Park, Pretoria. If you're around there, come out there and hang out with us. That's it for today's show. Thanks to the team, as always, this important production team that supports me as the host. So, coach and captain. I've said that before. But it's time now for the news. It's 6 o'clock.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. The top stories this hour: the DA wants feedback on Mapisa Nqakula probe and judgment reserved in the MK IEC matter.